What is up, everyone? What is up? How's it going? How's it going, everyone? Move my mic out of the way. This PC part market right now is as bad as my back pain, and it's only getting worse. Hopefully, unlike my back pain. Sorry. I'm just waiting for caffeine to kick in. So what's everyone been doing? It's Monday, the worst day of the week because we have to go back to work, back to school, and all of that stuff. Can you explain how apps run into Docker containers? So basically all a Docker really is it's like a virtual machine, but it's not. Basically what more or less it is an entire operating system inside of it that then can operate those applications, and you can allow certain traffic to flow however you want. So basically a virtual machine will give you the most amount of isolation. Docker allows for portability and some sandboxing capabilities around it. I Dockerize a lot of things as well. It's also great because it can package all the dependencies in together, so it doesn't matter whether you're running Docker on Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can run that Docker. So like when I build my Dockers, I think I'm mostly using Alpine Linux to build a lot of my things. You can do, no, I think I'm using Debian Slim. I think. Either way, you can pick what you want. Technically, I've heard from friends of mine, you can build Windows-based Dockers if you really want. They're just kind of heavy because it's Windows. Look, in general, I found something scary. Oh, God. What did you find? Open source. Okay, now, depending on the requirements for this, I might be putting that to use. There might be some funny things we can do with that. Yeah, never grasped the concept. Yeah, it's a little bit different because it took me a while to grasp the concept as well. It's because I'm so used to virtual machines, and I'm like, how is this different? So, if I'm correct here, I was educated in, it is basically, user space separation of the applications, whereas virtual machines allow for an even harder delineation, I think would be the word here. Okay, so this is what one of my mods just showed me. Open Sora. So Sora, for those of you that are aware, is of course the video production AI that's, kind of taken over the world. You see a lot of those funny videos out there. This is Open Sora. So, ooh, this is not heavy at all. With only 11B, to give you an idea, I'm running Gemma 312B. So if that's all it takes, oh, we're gonna have some fun with this. Yeah. I'm gonna have to figure out how to pipe that into my LLM box. For those of you not aware, I run my own little LLM server. So, hold on. Yeah. It's gonna be at a different IP soon. I just haven't gotten around to setting up the separate VLAN for it. But it's working here. We got Gemma 312B over here. What's up, Spooky? How's it going? Dave not here, man. Is Pop OS best for me for cybersex student plus gaming? Okay, let me put it this way, and I've told a lot of people this. There is no absolute best. You find what's best for you. Now, I will put this little caveat here. There is a best when it comes to edge cases. So you mentioned cybersecurity. So if you're looking to go down the ethical hacking route, you might want to look at Parrot OS. which is based on Debian. So it's got the same, well, parent, grandparent, you want to call it that, as Pop! OS. It can definitely be daily driven, but I do use Pop! OS for a lot of my stuff, but I have a laptop that has Parrot OS completely on it for when I need occasional ethical hacking tools just at my fingertips. But what I would also just stress is, like, a lot of people need to get away from the mindset of what is the absolute best distribution for X, and rephrase it into what is the best distribution for me and my workflow. Because here's the reality. Everyone's like, well, what's the best for gaming? You're really all using the same Linux kernel. You're all using the same NVIDIA or AMD drivers. You're using the same Proton. You're using a lot of the same, things under the hood for the most part, that at a simplified level, the main difference here is the way you flow through your operating system, maybe some organization of files, and the primary thing being your graphical user interface, and in some cases, not Amnesiac, is it Amnesiac? The like Bazite and stuff, not Amnesiac, there's another term for it. Not persistent. God, the term escapes me right now. But basically, what I'm trying to get at is there's not much difference between most of the distributions at the end of the day. You're going to run the same applications. You're going to basically be, for the most part, have your graphical user interface and your package manager are the main differences there. Yes, Arch users, we hear you. Now go touch grass! I was about to get new RAM, but it's way too expensive. It's cheaper to get a second-hand PC instead. Yeah, it's really bad right now in the market. I was actually planning on next year upgrading the system entirely. But the reality is, my 5950X is still plenty good. But I wanted to go at least with the 9950X 3D or whatever happens to be out by AMD at that time. So I have a more updated workstation. And then I was planning to get at least a 5070 Ti. Well, the RAM prices and everything kind of threw a wrench in that, because 64 gigs of DDR5 ain't cheap. Immutable. Thank you, Spooky. I could not think of the word. That was what I was thinking of. So I decided for the foreseeable future, I'm just going to repaste the machine here, put a new power supply in it, and upgrade the GPU, and dust out the whole machine. And then in spring, April, May, when Pop! OS 2604 comes around, I'm just going to reinstall everything on the operating system from scratch, back up all the, the usual stuff, and start again. I generally Googled it because I blanked on it too. Yeah, I know. It's just a term that doesn't come up too much, at least, in my area. Oh, God damn it. TikTok is not working with the chat right now. Okay, so I'm sorry if I happen to skip TikTok chat. It's the merged view that I usually have is not cooperating as it should. So hold on, let me restart the TikTok. So I can still see the chat over there. I just, want to be inclusive of all the platforms that I'm on, so I don't seem like a dick. I'm an asshole, not a dick. Big difference. Okay. Is that gonna work now? Maybe? I don't know why Social Stream Ninja is being a little derpy today. But anyway. I'll at least catch up on this. I got 32 gigabyte of DDR5 for $100 2 years ago. Yeah, it's crazy. Are you using OBS to stream on TikTok? I am using OBS to stream on TikTok. But the stream box itself is not Linux yet. So I have a Windows 11 Enterprise over here, formerly Windows 10 Enterprise. I had that for some testing and CAD CAM software I was using years ago. Now I don't do as much CAD CAM. And it's just kind of turned into the stream PC over time. And now I have a bunch of Elgato hardware. I've got the Elgato key lights. I got a couple capture cards, which capture cards do work on Linux. And I got the Elgato teleprompter, which works with NVIDIA RTX to have my speech travel with it. I got to figure out how to move over the stream decks and all of that stuff, and I just haven't sat down properly. And eventually what I'll do is I'll get probably a Blackmagic capture card, but they're like $600 for the one I want, because I want a 4-port capture card so I can capture the camera, capture my PC, and then capture, you know, a second device, because I use 3 capture ports, just so that when I have an occasional device, I can plug it in, like say we're working on a Raspberry Pi together or whatnot. But yeah, I am using OBS. I don't like using TikTok Live Studio because it's kind of janky, and then I have OBS multi-streaming to 4 different platforms at one time. So I'm not using Restream or any of those services. I'm using Atom Vertical plugin, and then I'm using their multi-stream plugin on OBS. So I push it out to Twitch as the primary, then there's Kick and YouTube as well, and then vertically I'm pushing it to TikTok. So you're gonna see a lot of stuff that I show that happens to be cut off, because as I say all the time, you only see this much on TikTok, but there's, you know, this wide, there's this much. Windows 11, ew. Yeah, I know, it's Windows 11, but it literally just sits there and it's a speak until spoken to machine, and I firewall a lot of the Microsoft telemetry on my pfSense firewall, so it can't be a chatty Cathy when it wants. And it's enterprise Windows, so it doesn't have a lot of that bloat to begin with. I have an enterprise key from Windows 7 days. That still works. Do you think RAM and SSDs are going to be cheaper next year? Hell no! It's actually going to get worse. With Micron pulling out, Micron will officially be out of the supply game, what'd they say, February? I think it was. So, with that being said, come February, it's going to get even worse, because now we're down to 2 DRAM and flash manufacturers. And effectively, you had a triopoly of all these different devices and everything. So we're going to basically be reliant on Samsung and SK Hynix. Really? You did the lights out for 5 minutes? You prick. Done dirty by my own mods. At least I am warmed by the lights of my monitors. I'm planning on using CatchyOS on my second, but I am a Luddite who still uses XFCE. There's nothing wrong with XFCE. I still use it on my ham radio PC. It's a nice, lightweight GUI. Oh, did I mention I got my second GPU in the mail, a 7800 XT? Nice. I would like to start moving to AMD GPUs, but there's quite a few workloads that I still work on that NVIDIA is a must. Not just in terms of video, I mean 50-50 on the stream PC. I got a 3070 in the workstation, soon to be a 5070 Ti. I've got a 5060 Ti in the LLM box next to a 3050, and then I got a 1660 Super that's going to be in the TTS box that just happened to be in my hands. And when I upgrade this 3070 to the 5070 Ti, that 3070 is going to be going into another LLM box, which I'm going to be using for moderation research. What's the safest way to unplug a USB after installing Pop OS? Just make sure it's not in use. Just like, so when you open up File Explorer, the files, or I think down in the dock sometimes it'll show it. I'm not entirely sure, because I haven't done it in a while. Here, I'll just do it. find a frickin' port that's open. Nope, that one's taken. On the keyboard. There we go. Are you gonna show? There we go. Okay, so, yeah, I was right. So, if we see right over here, I'm gonna show my screen. You should see in your file, there's two ways. You can see it in the File Explorer over here. Now, unfortunately, if you're on TikTok, you can't see it. But way over here, it's showing my disks as well, and I can right-click that and select Unmount and or Eject. So you can eject it that way. Very similar to Windows. But in most cases, unless you're actively writing to the USB, you're not going to have much issues. Usually. I haven't run into issues, too. R.I.P. Crucial. Yeah, indeed. I'm kind of pissed off because Crucial was my number one go-to memory company. Whenever I needed memory for a laptop or a system, and I had to make sure that it was compatible, because sometimes certain vendors don't work in motherboards. There's, like, weird issues. But Crucial was always my go-to in laptops and desktops and servers. I used to always shop from the Crucial website to get orders for when I was in an MSP, and I did that for clients as well. But yeah, you wanted to see what it did. It doesn't do anything automatic yet. One of these days I'll figure out how to link it. I haven't sat around and done that yet. I realized I was still on my computer screen there. The torture I've endured for these 7 streams. What torture? So 2 companies have the monopoly on RAM production? No. So a monopoly is a singular owner or dominant force in the market. So what we've had up until recently was, some people call it a triopoly, but the proper term is oligopoly, which is you have basically a few colluding. Now, what we more or less are turning into is a duopoly. Another example of a duopoly is Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. They're pretty much the 2 dominant actors in the soda space. Almost every brand falls right under them in some way, shape, or form. Look, as much as I like Dr. Pepper, even though I haven't had it in years, it's still not that big of a soda, and in the end of the day, Coca-Cola and Pepsi are regarded as the 2 largest soda companies. Did you hear Netflix owns WB now? I thought Paramount was posing to do a hostile takeover. That was my understanding. Crucial is great. I'm on a Crucial drive right now. Breaks my heart that they're shutting it down. Yeah, I'm running Crucial memory on this system. Most of my systems have Crucial. This guy is running G-Skill. I must have gotten that on sale at Micro Center when I built my system. But yeah, Crucial has been my go-to for a lot of things. In my laptops, it's either got the Samsung chips that usually come stock in a lot of those, or it's got Crucial memory. Because I remember System 76 actually had issues with some other third-party memory I was getting, and then it wouldn't boot until I actually put in the stock memory it came with that was Samsung, or I installed the Crucial sticks that are in my System 76 Pangolin laptop now. There are issues like that. Damn it, Jeff. What are you saying? What's the logistics for running a local LLM? Do I just stick an eGPU in my closet next to my NAS? So, for running your own LLM, it depends on how big of an LLM you want. Your big limitation is honestly going to be RAM, or specifically VRAM. So, running, I think, as long as you have at least 6 gigabytes of VRAM, you can run Gemma 3 4B. I can show you what that looks like. 8 gigabytes is a little bit more headroom there, but 16 really gives you the ability to do some other stuff. So, tell me about the fall of Rome. All right, this is Gemma 3 4B. This uses about 5 gigabytes of VRAM, give or take. So you see, that's running on an NVIDIA 3050. So it's not a high-end GPU. It's a decent mid-range GPU, still a couple years old, but look how fast it runs. So that's Gemma 3 4B, which I find is a pretty good all-around LLM. There are some other ones out there. You can go to huggingface.co.com. Let me make sure of that. Huggingface.co. Yeah, .co. Now, huggingface.co is where a lot of people share models and everything. So you can go through and you can find a ton of models out there. Just know that with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, you'll probably have to stick to the 4B to 7B range. But you can do a lot with that. Of course, some won't work as well. And then there's things called quantization where you can make it kind of smaller. With 16, you can do a lot more. So I can switch this to Gemma 3 12B, which is the same model but with more parameters. That's so much faster than the free AI. Yeah. And that's running locally. This is open source, baby. In the bed, it's the middle of the day, but my dog woke me up at 4 a.m. So have a good night, Spooky. Thanks for hanging out. How's the LLM? It is called Open Web UI. So this is another open source project. Now, if you want to set this up yourself, I've kind of made that a little bit easier for all of you. So we'll pull up my GitHub. So I actually made a project. I haven't talked about this yet on my content. But if you've been in the Discord or my Matrix server, shameless plug that you should join it. The links are in bio. You can actually see a lot of the stuff that I'm building. So I have a lot of repositories, and one of the most recent ones in here has this thing called Franken LLM. So what I've been doing, and I still am developing this, but it's what I'm running right now. This is a setup I have to run. So this box right here has an NVIDIA 5060 Ti and a 3050. Technically, you could have one GPU run all these models. But I had the idea of, what if I want to have two run at the same time? And then Yitz can, use it at the same time. And then we can have different API endpoints to hit it for different loads. Hyperlink for Discord doesn't work? Jesus, let me just... I can fix that. Let me see. Okay, the Discord is redirecting. Yeah, it's landing me. So, 1 second. Socials. Yeah, it's working. It's the N bit, I think. Which N bit? Because it's landing me on here when I go to my links. Now, if you open it up from TikTok, TikTok tends to get a little derpy with opening external links. You have to open it in a another browser. But I made it simple for everyone. If, for any reason Discord, is being derpy, or, TikTok's being derpy, just go to discord.chiefgeek3d.com. And all of my links are links.chiefgeek3d.com. See how easy this is? I 301'd everything. No, 302'd it. Yeah. 302 is temporary. But yeah, anyway, Franken LLM is basically an installation service that I've set up for you to set up, all the different services that you probably are going to want to need. Now, I've been working on making this more flexible, but this should realistically work for single GPU setups. the way I've designed it, but I've only been testing on a 2 GPU setup. But it will set up Docker, Olama, which is what runs the LLMs that I'm using, and then it can layer on Open Web UI on top of it. And it'll take care of the installation for you. I have it both in a manual mode and a super installer mode. So you just run these 2 scripts if you want. You can configure it however you want. I've done a good job of trying to flesh out the documentation, but if you find something that doesn't work well, just open up an issue on here and we'll work through it. But I even put some guidance over here for, you know, LLMs that I recommend for various sizes. And, you know, how to get started, troubleshooting, you know, things that I have come across, things like that. But yeah. Oh, the stream elements command. Did you do the, you mean that? That works. I see what it is. I see what you mean. Okay, hold on. Hold on. I have to put a space because of the backslash there. The link, this is all in my GitHub for this little thing if you're talking about that. Just go to github.com, look up my username, ChiefGeek3D. You can find a lot of my repos there. It actually should be on my profile. I think I updated my profile. Yep, right there. Third down on the highlighted projects I have on my profile page there. So you can even, if you want to learn about pfSense as well, I've been working on some stuff to improve pfSense, which then turned into documentation for block listing and IDS-IPS setting up with Suricata. That just tends to happen where I go a little bit overboard. Okay, so let me fix the Discord chat bot. Hold on, chat commands, custom commands, that. Okay, hold up. Let's see. That's the issue, is I didn't, I had a space in there. I didn't have a space there. So now it should work. Now, the interesting thing is, on YouTube, it figured it out. Yeah. But the kick commands are not working. Wah, wah, wah. Alright. I'll have to figure out kick sometime. Kick's kind of weird, I notice, with how they do setups and stuff like that. Anyway, catching up on the chat over here. For some reason, TikTok chat is not merging in with Social Stream Ninja today. Huh. That's annoying. It was working my stream. Oh well. Let's see. What is let's catch up on the TikTok chat over here, as well as the Twitch chat and all of that. It's so bad my workstation RAM died due to a ST. I hope it's not STI. Unsure if PC or fish tank. It's PC. That's a PC. In fact, I customized this case a while ago. Where's that? Here it is. I have actual neon in here. I just don't turn it on because it's like so freaking bright. That was one of those things like, yeah, that'll be cool to put in. And then I was like, I should have thought this through. But yeah, I worked with a local glass artist on that and everything. It was a good idea. The original idea behind it was I wanted to have an old school build. And I remember cold cathode lighting. That was a thing we did before LED lighting in computers. I did not realize you cannot find cold cathode kits, like, anywhere. I mean, I found some, like, kind of sets, but nothing like I was like, I want to stick that in my machine. So then I'm like, what's the closest thing to it? And I'm like, neon! So there's a 10,000 volt transformer on the back of the case. And a whole other AC cord going to it. So I'm not getting rid of that case anytime soon. It's also got a pleats of my logo. Sell the key lights, just use the neon. TikTok banned Social Ninja. No, they didn't really ban it. So the way Social Ninja works is I have browser windows up for everything, and it's catching the pop-out chat. You just can't have it minimized is all. Alright, so catching up. I've had frenemies too. RAM will be worse for the next 3 years, to be honest. To increase supply, they'd have to build new fabs. Well, that too, but the issue is everybody's trying to, supply these AI companies because they're willing to pay top dollar for this stuff. I can't wait for this entire fad of AI to collapse, and it will collapse. It's just, it's unsustainable, the way they're marketing everything. The problem with it is that LLMs as a service, it's not a sustainable model. OpenAI, I think last I checked, is operating at a $104 billion loss. There's no way effectively OpenAI can maintain the services that they're operating and break even and expect people to pay them, hand over fist in terms of money. Because here's what you have to think about. You'd be like, well, ChatGPT is like enterprise plans and all that. A lot of businesses would rather spend the money on hosting their own LLMs, whether it be through AWS, Bedrock, or something like that. Or doing exactly what I did, which is more or less a higher end version of, we're going to build our own GPU server, do our own inference, and all that. MS365, if you're using a school account when you left, that Windows PC isn't yours anymore. Yeah. I have Microsoft 365 for my home lab. I like their stuff better than Google, but I use a whole identity provider different than Microsoft to manage my system. The Windows system. There's different ones out there. You can use Microsoft Entra, but yeah, the Microsoft 365, it can get kind of janky if they don't set it up right. Because there's Office 365 and then there's Microsoft 365. Office 365, which I have, is just giving you, Microsoft Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all those different things in the web version. And then you get Teams in there. And I do use Teams when I meet with potential sponsors and vendors sometimes. Believe it or not, I actually kind of like it, for at least what I do. I'm not a fan of Slack. I'm just not. I know, some people are going to go, but not everyone's going to go on Matrix. That's my preferred platform if we were going to be completely honest. But, Office 365 is about $6 per user per license. Then I layer on top of that a email security suite called Avanon, which is about $7 per user per month. And that does adaptive DLP, and it's basically using an AI so that it can inspect the emails and stuff to and then do sandboxing of the links, and basically it'll click on the link for me, detonate it, make sure there's no malware that's there before it sends it to me. Like, I honestly get at least a dozen attempts every single week, credential harvesters, things like that, from fake vendors trying to compromise me. It just makes you wonder how often many creators are actually going through this if I'm not a big person, and I'm getting that every week. But anyway, Catching up in chat. What's the logistics for running a local LLM? Oh, yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, so it's more about getting a GPU. Can you do it with a CPU? Yes, but it's a little bit slow. But if you're doing it with just a CPU, Mistral actually surprised the hell out of me. On my work PC, I did in the past use Olama locally on Windows Subsystem for Linux using Mistral, I want to say 3B, maybe 7B, on just a Core i7. Now, granted, it is kind of slow, but it worked. Are you going to make a video about RAM shortage? It's tied into the LLM, the AI video I'll be having out soon on YouTube. So, a lot of people are aware. I've primarily been focusing on YouTube and streaming, and then clipping the videos from YouTube to put them onto TikTok. So, the best thing I can recommend is check out all the platforms I'm on. Follow me there. Because TikTok, honestly, like, you get the stuff anywhere from a week to 2 weeks after it's on YouTube. Wait until one of my moderators gets around to clipping it. He's got a job and stuff to do, so it's, you know, one of those, I just pay him money. He does the clipping of videos. I'd rather have a human do that than AI. But yeah. My 2080 Ti has 11.6 gigabytes of VRAM and run GPT OSS 20B pretty decently. Nice. Yeah, I haven't played with GPT OSS. I've been liking Gemma 3, but there's so many LLMs out there. So your 3080 is just hooked up in your main desktop tower, not a closet server type of thing? No, it's a 3070. Now, there is another way you can run an LLM locally. So this is an easy way I have done on my desktop for years. Now, granted, I haven't used it in a while because I've been building it a server to do this for me. But it's an easy way for you... Here we go. It's called LM Studio. I think I just updated this. So you can run models locally on your machine here, load and unload them as you desire. So, see? Gemma 3. Load the model. Wait, I don't think it's going to load that in this GPU. No, it will not. Let's use a smaller one. We'll use, that should be fine. DeepSeek R1 distilled. That should be fine for at least this. Tell me about the American Revolution. So this is going to be running on my local machine. So it's thinking because it's a DeepSeek type. But you see how fast it's going. But yeah, so you can run that locally on your machine really easy. LM Studio is available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. I made a video on this like a year or so ago. I think it's one of the pinned videos on TikTok, actually. But yeah, you can easily do this without running a dedicated server. The reason why I'm running a dedicated server is I want to get into automation with stuff. So I'm soon going to be using an automation workflow program called N8N. Some people may have heard of that. And what I'll be able to do is automate tasks to then use the AI agentically. So I can then start having it do more things. Like eventually what I want it to do is I'm building a SIM server, security information and event monitoring on this little PC over here. That's why it's blinking so much. It's collecting all that data from my firewall. And I'm going to feed all that data into a SIM with a logging server and then look at having an AI process it so that way I can be like, hey, what happened over the past day? And then I can just parse it and be like, yeah, so this happened, that happened, these got blocked, blah, blah, blah. But yeah. Did you know they make furnaces now that you can control from a Bluetooth connection? That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, you've had Internet of Things Nest thermostats for years. No, I don't know, N8N. Tell us, Pop. You hush, you vampire! I switched to Bazite and it's been great so far. That's good to hear. It's just going to be like the graphic card bubble. It will come down soon. I wouldn't say soon. It's probably going to be a few years because my understanding is OpenAI has an agreement for like the next 5 years for DRAM or something like that. It's crazy. I'm going to eject that model. But what's the quality of the content like? It depends on the model you have and the training of the data that you have. So you can enrich the data for an LLM even further. And you can do this very simply by using another LLM called an embedded LLM to index information. So let's say you download all of Wikipedia, which actually is only about, my understanding, 60 gigabytes without all the images. If you get all the images and all the media, Wikimedia, it's 2.5 petabytes. But Wikipedia itself is only about 60 gigabytes. It'll take a GPU like a 3050, nothing too high-end. By the calculations I've done, I still have to go about doing this, about 30 hours to index all of Wikipedia. Then from there, your LLM, like Gemma and all that, then can start going in through the information that you've indexed. So the one thing I'm looking at for my moderation bot that I'm looking at building is I'm actually looking at, there's repositories from different universities of people with awful tweets, hate speech, things like that. And I'm going to try training an LLM on this data set to be able to identify overt and, overt racism, toxic behavior, misogyny, things like that, as well as smaller things to be able to classify that. And, yeah. So you can actually do this pretty flexible. That's why I keep saying the real revolution when it comes to this whole AI hype, which LLM's not an AI, let's just be clear, I've said that many times, is that people will be able to democratize this a lot easier. So think of what you're able to do right now with just a mid-range GPU. And that technology is only going to improve. Corporations have to be able to justify to consumers and investors the value in giving them money to maintain their service. OpenAI is running at a $104 billion deficit right now. They're burning money. And unlike Facebook, you know, you could make the argument with Facebook when they were doing their thing. Oh, they're burning through money. They're not, you know, doing all that. Now they're at a big point where my understanding is they, and correct me if I'm wrong, they are actually making money. But serving regular internet content is a much easier endeavor than what they're doing with AI. Because processing-wise, you don't need the levels that you do with OpenAI. You just have to make sure you have CDNs and data centers to hold all the data and that it's mirrored across different data centers. It's an ordeal in and of itself. I'm not going to, dispute that, but it's magnitudes more difficult to do what OpenAI is doing. And Facebook owns their own data centers. They own a lot of their own infrastructure. OpenAI is spending millions per year renting. What is CDN? Content Delivery Network. So what a CDN is, like Cloudflare. Cloudflare's a CDN. A lot of people don't know that, but that's a big part of what Cloudflare does. They don't just, absorb DDoS and all that stuff. Basically what you do is, let's say I have a website. I do have a website to do this. You have your server behind there. So when the first person comes across and, starts accessing data, it'll then get cached, at least the way I have it architected, cached into Cloudflare. Okay, so the first time it'll deliver to them from the speed of my server, but at let me start. It'll deliver from my server the data there, but then it will cache it in Cloudflare. And then when subsequent people come through to request the same data, it's hitting Cloudflare's data centers all across the world to deliver that much faster, reducing the load on the actual servers that I own. So I think Facebook is using, what is it, Akamai, if I'm not mistaken? But basically a CDN is a giant cache, to oversimplify it a little bit. Hey dude, I did the plunge and went to Linux. Nice. If Linus Torvalds flipped NVIDIA off, does this mean we won't get better NVIDIA stuff on Linux? That was so many years ago. Like, I literally think that was a decade ago, and things have actually changed. NVIDIA has open source drivers now. In fact, my server is using the NVIDIA 580 open drivers to get it to work on my 5060 Ti. They're starting to open things up more. NVIDIA works pretty well on Linux now. Now, granted, you still have to install the NVIDIA drivers, but they have the NVIDIA full-on proprietary drivers, and they have the NVIDIA open source drivers now. And NVIDIA has actually been apparently contributing code to Nouveau, which is the open source NVIDIA drivers for older ones that NVIDIA doesn't officially support. So the key, let's just use... I'd kill for a neon lamp in my computer. Yeah. He streams on the moon. You stream on Facebook? No! I don't have a Facebook. What do I look like, a boomer? I got back pain, that's it. That's the closest I am to a boomer. Recently purchased a laptop with an AMD, sorry, trying to decipher this. With AMD's AI processor, HX370, the laptop has 32 gigs of RAM, an integrated GPU, and an NPU that apparently is rated at 50 trillion operations per second. What can I realistically do with it when it comes to LLMs? You can do a lot. We can do quite a bit. Those AMD AI processors are pretty good. Now, granted, I don't think it's all that much compared to, like, NVIDIA. NVIDIA still is king because you have to understand that a lot of the projects out there are optimized for CUDA. Hold on. 3050 tops benchmark. I'm just curious where that stacks up. Okay, so a 3060 is apparently rated at about 100 trillion operations per second. So a 3060 is about double what you're at. But you can still do quite a bit with that. The issue you have is you're just going to have to make sure that you get something that can actually work on, I think AMD is using OpenCL or something like that. Hold on. On AMD. I haven't really done this, so... looks like, let's see. AMD apparently has their own little thing here. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you can use PyTorch, which I've used for a few of my things. So you can use PyTorch for AI inference. Okay. Cool. So they have a little guide over here, actually, for how you can use PyTorch for this. Okay, so I see model ID. You can import the model right there. Yeah, so this is just Python over here. It's not that complex. And they're showing you how to make a chatbot over here. That's not too bad. They got a few articles in here. Oh, look at that. They're using LM Studio. So you should be able to use LM Studio with your AMD GPU, and you shouldn't have issues with that. So the same software I was using a second ago, just download LM Studio and then load up the models you want to use. Now, granted, you don't have a very powerful machine. I don't either. When I say very powerful, we're talking about, like, top end is, and most of you haven't heard of this, the NVIDIA RTX 6000 Pro Blackwell. That's a $10,000 GPU with 96 gigabytes of VRAM. That's, like, top of the line, what I'm considering, like, high end. They've got GPUs that have a lot of VRAM. Like, even a 5090 with 32 gigabytes is still kind of like middle of the road, but you can do a lot with it. I'd love to get a 5090 just to be able to do some LLM inference and run a 70 billion parameter model, but yeah, I'm not dropping that kind of money. If I were honestly able to spend that kind of money easily, I'd probably save up a little bit more and get an NVIDIA DGX Spark for 4K. But yeah, only 96, light work, no reaction. But you should be able to do a lot with that. You'll just have to look up documentation specifically for how yours operates, but it looks like LM Studio should be able to do exactly what you need. Let me make sure. LM Studio. AMD AI CPU. Oh, look at that. There you go. Technology preview release. Oh, so it should be into the latest versions. Okay, that should be fine. Linux is so smooth. Oh yeah, it's really smooth. And this is technically an older Linux, because I'm running Pop OS 2204. They're releasing 2404, I think, like any day now, if they haven't already. I'm waiting for 2604, because I'm not just going to upgrade and wipe my operating system just to clear it out for another one in a few months. And I think 2604 will have a lot more polish. 2204 has been nice for me, and it's they've done a lot of backporting. Yeah, back pain is no joke. Yeah, my back's hurting. It is. So for those of you that didn't know, over the weekend, I had to deal with a plumbing issue, snake the drain in my bathtub because it wasn't draining. Eventually got it to at least go to slow enough that I could take a shower and it wouldn't back up the water. Plumbers just came today and snaked it properly, so now it's clear fine. But that was day one. And day one was when I already went to Micro Center to pick up all the parts that I needed for my machine. And then that evening, the bathroom had the issue. Then the next day, the washing machine, the drain pump was making a noise and it wouldn't drain the water out. So I then had to use the shop vac, bail out all the water. You can use a shop vac to suck out water. But you had to do that like 4 or 5 times and drag like multiple gallons of water at a time. So that killed my back right there. And then you had to, you know, tilt the washing machine over on its side to get access to the drain pump. And then I pulled the drain pump out like, okay, do I need to replace the drain pump? Or do I need to, or is something wrong with it? Sure enough, I pull it out and there's a piece of cloth that somehow wedged it in there and got stuck around the impeller. So I cleaned that out, put it back in, and then did all that. And that was also while I was cleaning the basement out so that I could fit servers underneath the network rack. Because I don't know if y'all have really seen it, but in some pictures I've shown it, it was a mess around the network rack because I used to have bins stacked around there of just various cables and all that. And the utility room was a mess too. So I reorganized the utility room, and then I put down some plastic pallets so I could stack the computers over there, and started all that stuff. So like, here, I'll show you. I'll show you, chat, what it looks like. So you can see I organized all my tools and everything. I know where all my tools are. They were all around the house. I had 3 stud finders. I had multiple pliers of the same kind and all that, because I had the ADHD curse of, you know, losing track of where things were. And that's how the network rack looks right now. I put these plastic pallets down in preparation for the UPSs and desktops that are going to be underneath it. I punched down a metal piece on the network rack so I can run the Ethernet cables. So there'll be some really cool stuff. N8N, all that stuff. But anyway, yeah. Tried Mint for the first time the other day, and I'm genuinely considering switching it from Windows 11 after I graduate. Worth it. Honestly, when I was in college for my associates, now granted, this was many years ago, I was using Linux full-time, and then I just put Windows in a virtual machine. Now, things have changed because now you have proctoring software and all that, because my tests run pen and paper. I'm an old man. I went to school uphill, both ways, in the snow, 5 miles a day. You know, like that old adage. But I did set up a Windows laptop because I'm going back for my bachelor's, and I'm like, I may as well just cross that box off, because with my CISSP, I apparently can knock out quite a bit of the stuff. WGU's been on the list to look at, amongst others, but yeah. What can I search up to look up good info on the embedded AI and that training you mentioned? Just look up embedded LLM. There's lots of different things talking about that. It was also something that I stumbled across some research papers late at night, and I was just like half asleep reading it. So I don't remember where I found it. But also, some of this was straight up what Gemma 3 was also telling me as well. Let me see if I can find that chat. Okay, so I was actually using Gemma 3B, 312B. I think this is 12B. No, that's 4B. 4B is still actually pretty powerful, and you can see it was telling me how to do some NVIDIA SMI stuff. I think this was it. Oh yeah, this was what I was working on. So I was actually asking it questions about, are you trained on different sorts of data, how to do this, you know, I was going back and forth with it to see how its reasoning and logic would be, and then I found some other papers somewhere, can't remember where, but you can also, you know, it's like telling me data sets to pull up, things like that, but a lot of it you're going to still have to track down on your own. 13 years in professional tech, every iteration of Windows keeps getting worse. 11 is so bad. Yep. I got away from Windows many years ago. I actually miss having pen and paper exams. Some of this proctoring software is such a pain in the ass to deal with. Oh, I agree. I agree. I'd rather do pen and paper. So, my first taste of proctoring software. So when I took my CISSP, I was told explicitly, if you can't guarantee a quiet space, go to the Pearson VUE Testing Center. So I did that. That was a nightmare in and of itself, but, you know, you're there at the testing place. You're at least, you know, able to do what needs to be done. Now, I've only taken one exam, which is more or less proctoring. My ham radio technician test. When I got my initial technician license, I wanted to get that so bad, and just get it over and done with. So I found a place online that was doing the proctored exams. It was like $15 or so, the same cost as going anywhere in person or anything. And I think it was the University of Alabama or something like that. Anyway, one of the radio clubs in some college. Because you have to have at least 3 people monitoring your test taking. I could not eat. I was told, oh, you have to have a camera set up like my phone on Zoom with my laptop as well. Now, I went into the test with Linux, so they also need me to take screenshots of, you know, processes running and things like that. I used my Parrot laptop that was spare, because I didn't want to, you know, have too much PII, on that just in case, whatever. But, yeah, so they had me go through that. That was the most... I was more nervous preparing for taking the test than actually preparing, studying for the test. Preparing to take the test and then actually taking the test, it was only 15 questions. And I said after that, I am never doing that again. And then when I got my general test, there was a, either a police or a fire, or was it the local FEMA? Anyway, some local government agency had testing they do every quarter, same $15. I did that test in person. That one went fine for my general. I was a lot more chill, a lot better with it, circled in, you know, the packet, all of that stuff. Yeah. No, we're talking about my ham radio test. And my CISSP test. So I am not looking forward to going back to college with this proctoring software, even if it's just for a few months. Did you pass all of them first try? Yep. I passed my CISSP on one try. I passed my ham technician and my ham general on one try. I will try to go for my amateur extra at some point, but it's not a priority. So, if I end up getting this job that I'm actually possibly going to be getting in the next few months, they say they can pay for education and everything. I'm not only going to go for my bachelor's, I may go all the way for a PhD, just so that I can actually tell people, you know, well, you know, do it, because that's what the doctor said. I think that'd be great. Is the proctoring... I don't know what the proctoring software is. When did you cross 6 figures? 3 years ago or so? Granted, 6 figures means different things to different parts of the world and the country. Because, like, if you're in LA or New York, 6 figures ain't shit. If you just crossed, you know, the 6-figure line. Like, what is it, San Francisco, you can still be considered in poverty, making less than $120,000 a year or something like that? Don't quote me on that. But I remember it was some, like, ridiculous number that I'm like, what the hell? And then you can live in the middle of, like, in the Midwest and do pretty well on 50, 60. Hey, poppers. Hi, doll. Hi, bro. Oh. Yes, yes, I love you too. Where'd you guys come from? I know. Ah. Look at little boy. These are my dogs. We need more of the pups in the stream. Well, you know, over on the Twitch side, you can actually, you know, use channel points and give them treats. I'm cursed to live near Philly, where 100K is barely making enough to own a house. Oof. So here's the thing. It's still hard to own a house in most of the country, even on 100K. It really is. As I've told people, I could not afford my own house if I were to buy it today. This will blow your mind. When I went to go property searching and everything, we were finding properties for like $30,000 to $80,000. And I looked up all of those properties, and not one single one of them is going for less than 160. That is how crazy. Just read about your bot. That's impressive. Which bot? I talked about a lot. I had Stream Demon, BoonTube Demon, Star Demon, Penguin Overlord. We had Yo Mama as a service. And I think I'm forgetting a couple. Oh, I had like Solar Storm Scout too. I have them all on GitHub if anyone ever wants to, you know, use them. Oh, Penguin Overlord. Yeah, that's a fun one. I'm going to be adding more features into it over time, and then eventually I'm going to be making a, I'm going to either add or mirror the features into a Matrix version for my Matrix server. Thank you. For my next trick, I'm going to be working on an LLM moderation server. So I have my own LLM server that's running locally, and I eventually want to have it trained on data. Because the issue that I find is, one, regex doesn't understand the sense of nuance and can't look at history of users. And also, it can't figure out dog whistles or creative ways to get around using a regex, a filter, and stuff like that. So I'm going to be layering on top of it an LLM that's going to analyze at least Twitch and Kick, and then I'm hoping to do Discord and Matrix. So that way I can have some moderation services. And the reason why I'm making a lot of my own stuff is twofold. One, I've been finding a lot of issues where the services that I've been using, whether it's Stream Elements or, you know, all these announcement services, Me6, you know, all that, they go down and they're not reliable. So, like, I will go live on stream and it won't do an announcement sometimes. Or it may not support the services I want to use. So I'm, like, pulling a bender and screw you guys. I'm going to make my own, you know, bot to automate my announcements with hookers and blackjack. I'm making close to 100K in Denver, and I'm basically working paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, that's rough. The chat limit in LLMs, how are they related to tokens? So it's about context windows. So, are you talking about the chat limit of it outputting, or the chat limit of input? Because the input is more about the context window, from my understanding. Token is basically just a measurement of how much is being done. I don't even measure my own tokens because I'm on my own LLM box, although I probably can go find the metrics somewhere. Non sequitur, what are your feelings on Ubiquity? I use Ubiquity access points and switches, and I don't see any reason I'm going to be switching away from them. I am upset that they don't make the Unify cloud key anymore, the local one, and they want you to use their service, but they at least still provide software for you to run your own, because my Cloud Key Gen 2, the battery in it's died, so the UPS function of it is no more. So I'm going to move that over to a Raspberry Pi 4 running over PoE and set up NUT, network utility, network UPS tools to be able to get the signal for when my UPS is on battery for all the devices. My Synology is running of that. But I do not like unified gateways. They are too limiting. They are great for a plug-and-play system for people who don't want to deal with all the bells and whistles, and you're not really all that interested in dealing with all of the, what's the word? Nuances and, you know, like things like that. It doesn't have as much power behind, you know, the capabilities of, you know, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems, whitelisting and blocklisting. So I don't have a lot of customization there. But if you're just the average person, you're like, hey, I want to have a better network. I don't want to manage much about it. Yeah, go get a Unify Cloud, Unify, what is it? Dream Machine. No problem with that. It's a little bit expensive. They're like the Apple of networking, but in a good way. Not the current Apple, the old Apple. The Apple Gen 3 Apple, when Apple was really good and Apple was appling. But I like their switches. I like their access points. They're probably the best I would say in the prosumer market that you can get, I would like to get something like Aruba, but we're talking buku dinero. You know, that's not going to be in my budget. But yeah, I like my Unify switches. I have 2 switches actively in the rack, 4 access points. I'm probably going to add a 5th. I need to update my access points. I'm going to go from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 7. And then I'm going to put another access point in the backyard so I can get that covered. Do you think it's a better idea to learn a low-level language than a high-level language? It depends on what your goals are. I've never really done much low-level programming, so it depends on what your goals are in your career. Most cybersecurity people... Okay, a lot of people I know in cybersecurity don't really know how to code. They maybe script a little bit in Bash and PowerShell, maybe a little Python. But if you're in, like, the computer science side of it, you know, low level isn't bad to learn. I pretty much don't do it. I do Python. Almost all of my crap is in Python. And if it's not, it's in Bash. Go look at my repository. Actually, you can go look at my stats. Hold on. I did this thing in my portfolio. I found out somebody had a project that I could host in Vercel. Look at that. You can see 57.76% of all of my code has been done in Python. 25.97% is Shell. 13.5% is CSS. That's probably because of the email signature stuff I modified and all that. So disregard that. I don't really do CSS. That's voodoo magic to me. Okay. I don't like doing the front end stuff. I don't make things pretty. I just tell an LLM, make it look this way, and then we do it in VS Code with Claude. But then you can see, like, 0.33% is PHP, 0.36% is Dockerfile, and then 2% is HTML. So pretty much, as you can see, all I've really done in my career, for the most part, is Python and Shell. And the only HTML there, I'm gonna show you. PowerShell is genuinely such terrible syntax. Yeah, it is. That's why I really can't get it, because it looks like somebody wanted to make Bash and then had an entire kegger and then wrote it down while they're having a bender on the weekend on day 2.5 after somebody gave them some really good shrooms. I didn't know where I was going with that. I just let my mouth go. But yeah, like, this email signature is probably most of the, HTML and CSS. Between that and the support me page. So I was working on a fun little support page. You know, if you ever go to, I think, nope. I did not modify that website. I know where it's at, though. So I was doing a fun little project, like, how could I condense all of my socials and everything? And tips. So that's a page I came up with. That is this. I just didn't update the README with the live site here. Oops. Do you know latex? I know a lot of people into latex. It's not my bag. That was a joke. No, I don't really do latex. Haven't really had a need for it. C is fun to play with. Yeah, you deal with your pointers all day, Abby. Some of us would rather Rust. Thank you, thank you. I'm here till Thursday. Tip your waitress. Try the veal. Okay, let's get into the review on stream stuff. We got a few things here. hold on. Alright, so let's get to the review on stream. Where was I at? Okay, let me find where we were at. God, we have a lot of videos to go through this week. And content. Okay. Yeah, so here we are. We did the Micron story yesterday. So let's get up with the Linux experiment. And Nick, what'd you say regarding latex? I said that I know a lot of people into latex. What did you have for dinner? Fajitas! Or as some Americans will call it, vagitas. Hold up. My audio's not working. Give me 1 second. Unplug and plug back in. Settings. Okay, we got the analog. Okay, I got audio there. Run my script for reset pipewire. This is just my little script, which is also on GitHub, for me to create a combined sync. So that way my audio can go to my headphones and to the streaming PC. And
front, left.
There we go.
Front, right.
I rebooted the machine, so I had to run that script. Alright. We can close that.
And welcome back to the Linux and Open Source News Show. In this episode, we've got Valve building basically what is Proton, but for Android apps, based on Waydroid, which could really open the gates for a lot more stuff on Linux.
I haven't heard of Waydroid in a minute.
ZDNet arguing that maybe the Linux desktop is at 11% market share, which I don't think it is, but we'll talk about it. And we've got
That
some
seems
really
a little
interesting stuff
high.
happening around the Linux kernel and various distros. So let's get started right after I tell you about our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. They are your all-in-one platform to create, publish, and manage your own website. They have really super easy tools to create your online presence, whether you know how to code or not.
The only Squarespace experience that I have
lets you pick from
is
a variety of templates that are pre-built and will suit any
people
type of
complaining
website,
about
whether you're
Google
looking for a
Workspace
simple
with them.
blog, an online
Squarespace
store,
is
a
great.
video platform,
Just don't buy
whatever.
Google
All these
products
templates
through
are also
anyone.
optimized to give
And
you
honestly,
solid SEO,
it's
and
kind of
they even
annoying
have
to
a
use Google
bunch of
Workspace
SEO
in
tools that
general.
you need to make sure that
From
your
the billing
website
aspect and the
doesn't
management
end up
too.
in the last page of Google search.
I know why a
results.
lot of people get
On
it.
top of that, to go further, Squarespace has their
It says a
own
lot when I
design
say I'd rather
engine
have
to create your
Microsoft
own
Office
pages.
365.
You can just drag and drop elements where you want them, and you can change the colors, the fonts, and just tweak the template however you want, or you can automate all of
I
this.
always
And once
recommend
have
whenever you
something
get
like,
an
you can add
email,
extra
a
features,
website
like creating
host,
your own online
always set
shop
up your
with a
email
payment
separate
system
from
that
your
handles
web
credit
provider.
cards, PayPal, Apple Pay, and
Get
more.
it directly
You can even
from
design your own
Microsoft
logo
or
from
even at
Squarespace
least
and book your
Google
own
or
domain name. So check
Proton,
out
which I am an affiliate.
squarespace.com/the
Links in
Linux
bio.
experiment, or just click the link in the description and you'll get 10% off your first website or domain purchase. So, Valve is building their own version of Waydroid called Lepton, with a logo looking like a frog head with a little arc around it, like
Okay,
maybe an
why is
Adam's
it called
core kernel or
Lepton?
something. So everyone picked up on the fact that it might bring Android games to the platform, a lot of Android games being VR compatible to run on various already existing VR helmets. But I personally think that this would also help with running a lot of Android apps on the Steam frame and potentially on the Steam Deck and other devices.
This would be
as well.
great.
Valve also added support for Linux ARM and for Android to their Steam SDK in preparation for the launch of the Steam frame and the Lepton compatibility layer. Now, if certain
Imagine
comments
doing mobile
around
gaming on a
articles are
Linux
to be
desktop.
believed, it looks like they've been testing
Didn't
some Android
Microsoft
games
advertise that
specifically
feature
with
for a while?
Lepton, but not specific applications. So maybe they just want to support Android games and VR titles more than applications. But I feel that once the compatibility layer and the Android container is up and running, chances are you can run pretty much all you want that doesn't require a Google account, because I don't think they would ship a Google Apps image for Waydroid in their own version, licensing problems and all that. There was also a post on Twitter indicating that Walkabout Mini Golf will be the first Android game on Steam, and that owners of the game on Steam will have full access to it through its Android version without needing a separate purchase. So it seems like Valve will mostly be using.
I remember when Proton first came out, you could count the number of games that worked with it. So
on the Steam frame,
give it a few years, this is going to pick up.
Them to another platform. Now we'll have to see if, first, this is only going to be available for the Steam frame, which is their only ARM-powered device, or if they will expand that to the Steam Deck, the Steam Machine.
I'm pretty sure they'll expand it because Proton is available everywhere.
Heavily dependent on Steam and the Steam SDK, so maybe it's just not going to run as a standalone thing, at least not immediately. It seems more focused on games and to help developers port their game to the Steam frame without having to rebuild their entire thing for Linux on ARM, but I think it would really open the gates to having apps being deployed from Steam. We already have that. They already have an app section on Steam that lets you install stuff from Steam itself. So it's not a long shot to imagine that they would be able to add stuff like streaming services, YouTube, and others on the Steam platform, so you could download them to your Steam frame to view content with a VR screen in front of you, just like you were at the movies, but it's actually just in your helmet.
I'd like to get a Steam frame just to have that experience of like a giant
a pure handheld
TV
that also does
bed,
a lot of other
so I don't
things
have to
than just
disturb
gaming.
whoever's in
Anyway,
bed
it
with
is a
me.
very interesting project. It's based on Waydroid. We already have Waydroid, but in my experience, it's been really hit or miss. The performance wasn't really that good, maybe because I use an NVIDIA GPU in most cases. It just wasn't a great project in my experience in terms of the usability of it. So if Valve can do with it what they did with Proton, this really might open the floodgates for a lot more stuff coming to Linux, and I will absolutely follow that very closely. Now, still on
that'll
Valve,
be great.
in a recent interview, they confirmed that they were behind the FEX or FEX project all along. They didn't just pick FEX to run games on the Steam frame, they actually were funding it all along. Pierre-Loup Griffet told The Verge that Valve believes game developers should not be wasting time porting games if there is a better way, in this case, the translation layer or emulator. And I know this is going to get a reaction from people who really want native Linux ports that don't rely on Proton, because what Pierre-Loup says here also applies to those types of games. So in 2016 and 2017, Valve began recruiting and funding FOSS projects to make Windows games.
I get why people want native Linux ports, but it's harder for developers to actually justify making native versions. They'd rather dev it once, compile for multiple systems.
And funded it after that. The goal for Valve was to make sure that you could run any game on any hardware, and they're saying ARM might have desktop chips in the PC world at some point, citing, of course, Apple as an example. Valve doesn't currently have a plan to push manufacturers to make specific ARM devices. They're just open to opportunities, and Pierre-Loup says that they need to make sure that their entire catalog runs well and is well supported before they launch any such initiative, or even potentially
I think Valve's on the right track with this one, getting prepared for the future, because Windows has actually been trying to do the same thing, but they're doing it with Qualcomm, and it's been really iffy, because Qualcomm's not really been the best partner when it comes to developing stuff, and they're kind of obscure and with a lot of their documentation and approaches to do things. Like, let's talk about, like, the Windows RT. I remember Windows has actually had ARM in their environment longer than Apple has. But the fact that Windows still doesn't have proper ARM support because they're lacking that emulation layer and stuff like that says volumes. Now, I know they've been trying to work on that. So I think it's a good approach that Valve is trying to do the very same thing, because what it also will do is open up the ability for lower power devices that don't have to necessarily rely on x86. Now, ultimately, I'd like to see us adopt RISC-V more than I would ARM, but you know, it's gonna take some time for RISC-V to really mature, I think, to the point that we can actually use it, but give it a few years, we'll probably be there.
Devices based on ARM chips themselves. He also says that the ARM version of SteamOS is the exact same system as the one running on x86 platforms, just with the packages for ARM and the required x86 to ARM translation layers and the ARM versions of Proton.
Like I said, dev once, compile twice. It is very interesting
stuff because Proton was based on existing technologies. It was using Wine, DXVK, VKD3D, they retooled it, they repackaged it, they did a lot of work around it, but it was using existing stuff. It's the same thing with Lepton, where they picked Waydroid and are improving upon it. But for FEX, they basically just funded the entire project themselves, which means they just funded a full open source thing that can run on any other ARM device, not just their own, for their own needs, in a long-term vision, like 7, 8, 9 years in the future.
Some
That's
VR games
pretty
that are
impressive.
APK files.
And while Valve and Steam might have problems with them being basically a monopoly on PC gaming,
natively Android,
they're still doing a lot of stuff for Linux, and you can't really deny that. Now, Stephen Von Nichols, a major contributor to ZDNet, or ZDNet if you want to pronounce it more European-like, he has a theory about the Linux desktop market share, and he thinks it's actually closer to 11% than to the
as much as I would like to believe that, I can't really accept
only places
that.
Linux at 3.49% market share on PCs and desktops around the world, and at about 5% in the US. But there are plenty of other things that are unaccounted for in that data, notably the unknown OS line that is very high and can't really be anything other than mostly Linux, a little bit of BSD, and maybe a little bit of Windows users using tracker blockers. So Stephen feels that most of these 4.21% unknown operating systems are Linux, where the OS is probably hidden with a tracker blocker because StatCounter measures market share through web traffic, so a tracker blocker would
It's an interesting guess, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
It could also very well be 4% of Windows users just using tracker blockers, but as we all know, Windows users are probably less privacy-minded than Linux users. A lot of Linux users just went there for the privacy after Windows started gathering data, so I would also assume that a lot of those 4%
I've been there before they started gathering data. I just had a vendetta against Windows Vista.
Stephen also adds in Chrome OS at 3.67%, which in my opinion you really should not add up, because yes, it is Linux-based, but it's not really
I
Linux,
agree with that.
Free
I wouldn't really
open
count that as a Linux thing.
Desktop.org distro, basically running mostly Linux apps. It is a Linux kernel with some proprietary stuff on top, running mainly web apps. And also it's going away in a few years, so it's not like it's something we should count
That's
on.
why I don't like Google.
All of that together,
you never can trust them in the longevity on their products.
It even goes up to 41.7% of the overall all devices, mobile plus desktop market share, if you count Android, which, again, I would not count in there. It is not the same thing that you're trying to measure here. An Android user is not a Linux
Does it use a Linux kernel? Yes, but I wouldn't count it as a Linux full operating
obviously,
system.
I don't agree with his way of counting here. I don't think we should be adding up Android to Linux's market share, because someone who uses Android has not picked Linux as the system. They're not using our free and open source desktops. They're not using Linux applications. Same thing with people running Chrome OS. They haven't picked Linux for the benefits of Linux. They just bought a pre-installed stuff with Chrome OS that doesn't really run Linux applications. They're not really turning into Linux desktop users in a lot of cases. They're not really helping, contributing, or even just facilitating the adoption. It's not necessarily that useful to the entire Linux ecosystem, apart from maybe having a bit more device drivers being developed for Linux, which I will not say is a bad thing, obviously. Still, I'm pretty sure that among those 4.something% unknown operating systems, a lot of them are Linux users. Linux users are more privacy-minded than Windows users or macOS users, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those were just Linux distros with a big tracker blocker that just prevents StatCounter from counting this. There could be some Windows in there could be some B.
Or it's not just people with the big tracker blocker on the computer. We could be blocking it on our whole network. Like I do with pfSense. I block so many trackers on my firewall, it's funny.
in there, but I'm sure it's mostly...
I allow ads, but not the tracking.
Kernel 6.18 was released last week, and it's a
can't access a
sizable
lot of sites without ads.
First, there's better Linux gaming support and better utilities. There's a new driver for GPD handhelds to better monitor hardware and to better adjust performance on those. The ROG Ally and Xbox Ally and the Legion Go 2 from Lenovo also got fixes for suspend and resume. The DualSense controller...
Imagine buying an Xbox Ally just to put Linux on it.
Work properly on Linux as well. The Nuvo driver now uses the GSP firmware by default on Ampere and Turing architectures. There's a new driver for Mali GPUs as an initial first draft written in Rust. There's better support for the various NPUs found in Rockchip system-on-a-chips as well.
Oh, nice.
And on top of that, there's the new sheath.
That'll be good for the ARM development.
This is something that adds per CPU caches, meaning each core can have its own memory pool to store the various tasks that they need to do, which should improve memory management and yield much better multitasking performance for everyone on Linux. Not just for big servers, specifically, yes, for big servers, but also for every other device. So that's cool.
That's nice.
Bcache
You see this stuff? You see how Linux is still doing performance improvements? And what's Windows getting? AI to spy on ya. Who wants half the features that Windows 11's promising anyway? But we're getting faster multitasking in the next kernel. Yeah.
Now been entirely removed from the kernel as well because it's externally maintained. X4 got some improvements alongside XFAT, Fuse, XFS, and BetterFS. There's also initial support for haptic touchpads, those touchpads that don't truly click but just vibrate in.
What's this? Ubuntu users will benefit from small extended 4 tweaks in Linux 6.18. I use extended 4. Like I/O control, support in Tuna 2FS, support for 32-bit reserved UID, GID ranges, and the removal of legacy kconfig options. Why do I have the hiccups? This is nice.
And there's some laptop model-specific tweaks to...
Wait, what was that about XFAT? XFAT driver optimizations deliver a heft 16 times speed up in loading times. Ooh. See, I use extended FAT on my flash drives for when using my Windows PC over here if I'm not transferring something over the NAS. So that's nice.
To vibrate instead, and there's some laptop model-specific tweaks to add support for various keys and sensors. In the kernel 6.18, code that is loaded dynamically can also now be verified for integrity before it runs. The audit subsystem now supports multiple Linux security modules enabled at the same time. The UDP protocol...
Oh, this is mainline already.
...faster in some cases, thanks to changes made to better resist DDoS attacks. The scheduler got improvements for better assigning tasks to various CPU cores. And
wait, hold up. I was pulling up kernel.org. I missed something. But yeah, that kernel right now, that's mainline. That's the official mainline kernel right now. It's not stable. Stable's the branch you want to stay on. Like, I'm on 6.17 right now with Pop OS. But mainline is the currently developed one. So that'll be nice. Cool. So when Pop OS 2604 comes around, I'll definitely have these improvements.
Faster in some cases, thanks to changes made to better...
Hold up. The networking subsystem sees boost with UDP receive performance bettered by as much as 47% owing to low-level optimizations. Huh. Look at that. We're getting better network performance. Look at that.
DDoS attacks, the scheduler got improvements for better assigning tasks to various CPU cores, and there are plenty of other changes. As always, it's better performance, better
Microsoft,
support, better security,
you see these? These are called performance improvements.
On those updates to you. Now, it looks like the Linux kernel 6.19 is going to be a major release in terms of GPU and graphics driver when it arrives, which is not right now because 6.18 was just released. A ton of stuff was merged.
That'll probably be out for Pop OS 2604.
Including support for the Caller Pipeline API developed by AMD, Valve, Igalia, and others. This support is for AMD GPUs for now, but the Intel driver might also support it in 6.19.
Interesting.
This will help with HDR support, with color accuracy, and generally all color-related workflows or even just viewing content.
Oh, nice.
Older AMD GPUs are also being migrated to the
it's
AMD GPU driver
AMD.
instead of the older Radeon driver, meaning they will get Vulkan support and a much better driver as a whole. It's more stable, it's well-maintained, and it's likely more performant as well. New Intel integrated GPUs will also see support with the XC3 driver, and this also supports their built-in AI accelerators. The DRM Panic Blue Screen of Death for Linux is also now supported for Intel cards. Nova got support
we got our new
for
blue
newer
screen of
NVIDIA
doom.
GPUs as well. The
pops up
Nuvo
with the
driver
QR code
added
for kernel
compression
panic.
support and larger page sizes, so this should give a solid boost to the performance of NVIDIA GPUs that don't use the official NVIDIA drivers. The GPU part of the Snapdragon
source NVIDIA
X2
drivers
chips is now supported as well, and there are more Rust integrations in the Direct Rendering Manager, which will help build Rust drivers in the future. The Steam Deck also gained hardware temperature monitor support alongside plenty of other systems like Apple Silicon devices
Oh, nice.
and a bunch of other PCs.
Steam Deck's getting
There's
updates too.
Plenty of really cool stuff in 6.19, which will definitely help almost everyone that uses a GPU. So basically every single Linux
Woo,
user.
we all
That's cool. I
win.
feel like there's a fresh wind of hardware support blowing all over the Linux ecosystem, and I think that's really
Now all we
really
need is
cool.
cheaper RAM.
Linux did another benchmark of the Nuvo plus NVK driver stack versus the proprietary, or at least the official NVIDIA driver, and it is an interesting one. This fast driver combo is still half of the actual performance of what NVIDIA offers. But there is some sizable progress to the tune of 20% better performance when you use the latest versions from Git compared to what you can find in Ubuntu 25.10, at least with an RTX 5080. That's interesting because 25.10 is not that old, and the progress made since October is already massive. Now, there are areas where NVK and Nuvo are doing really well, like OpenCL benchmarks using Rust ICL or Rustic CL.
So it's still good for what, GPU
Although there are
capabilities?
some big things to fix still in terms of latency here. In games and rendering benchmarks, generally the official NVIDIA drivers still have a huge edge. Sometimes the free and open source stack hits 70% of the NVIDIA driver's performance, but as a whole, it's still not really close. Still, these benchmarks are super interesting because it really indicates that this stack is getting better and better and really, really fast. And with image compression support and larger page sizes support for Nuvo, this is probably going to get a big boost as well when 6.19 releases. So this is really good news. I personally don't think I would use a driver that only gives me 50, 60, maybe up to 70% of the performance of another driver that I can install. But if it starts to be 90%, 95%, maybe even 80, 85, I'm gonna start thinking about just using what is in the kernel instead of adding an external module that sometimes breaks and is just not as compatible with everything we have on Linux. Alma Linux is looking at other markets than the server, it seems. The distro, which started as a Red Hat Enterprise Linux clone but evolved into a Red Hat Enterprise Linux binary compatible distro instead, they're building a special interest group, basically a subdivision that focuses on a specific use case. And that SIG is focused on media and entertainment.
I miss
CentOS. Studios
CentOS.
working with visual effects, animation,
Alma's at least
and
around.
post-production. The goal is to make Alma Linux the choice to run media production for artists, for engineers, and for developers, with work done mainly
Well, it makes
on
sense.
making sure that
DaVinci
stuff like
had their own
Vue,
Linux
Houdini,
distribution,
and
which I think
Maya
was
and
using
all of that type of
CentOS.
software works properly or
Or is it
works
Rocky?
better than on other platforms and distros. They will also document various workstation and render farm builds to help standardize the hardware and the software stacks. Presumably, this also will open the door in the future to partnerships with hardware manufacturers, which could potentially pre-install Alma Linux and guarantee a certain compatibility with a certain software. They will also publish compatibility guidelines for app developers to ensure that their stuff runs as well as it can on these workstations. And of course, this special interest group is looking for contributors to help with all of that. I think it's interesting stuff.
it'll be
I'm not
nice
sure that
change.
a professional distro, as in something really stable, built on RHEL or OpenSUSE, well, or just SUSE Linux and stuff like that. I don't think a distro such as this has ever really tried to focus specifically on that type of work.
No, I don't think
so.
so.
That is kind of interesting.
Like, Da
I don't know
Vinci's
if
wrapped
this is going to
around,
go
but
anywhere,
yeah.
but it does open the door to some interesting possibilities, so I'll follow this closely as well. Now, another week, another Fedora proposal to replace some older elements of Linux. In this one, approved for Fedora 44, it seems like the old Linux kernel console, called FBCon for Frame Buffer Console, will be replaced by the newer KMSCon for Kernel Mode Setting Console, which is running in user space instead of running at the kernel level.
Oh, that'll be
the
nice.
end goal is to deprecate the entire FBCon console and frame buffer device emulation as a whole in the kernel.
It lost scrolling support a few years ago due to a
Apparently,
CVE.
FBCon, the current solution, isn't really well maintained. For example, it lost scrolling support a while back, which is annoying for a terminal, and
What's
also it depends on
Lenexa?
FBdev emulation, and it still requires
Linux?
some user space utilities like Bash to be useful. So
another operating
KMSCon
system.
feels like a better solution
Mac,
because
Windows,
it is
and
based
Linux.
on newer kernel features, namely KMS. It has some better
It's the operating
keyboard
system
support
I
with the
operate
ability
on.
to switch keyboard layouts in that kernel console, which is really useful.
It's not having
and it
a
should
stable
also be
version of
more
Fusion
secure because
360.
it is not running at
You
the
can always run
kernel
it in a
level.
virtual machine
It should
and
also
do
render fonts
GPU
much
pass-through.
better.
That's a
It can
possibility.
scroll, and if it crashes, it doesn't
get it.
trigger an entire
I had that
kernel
Windows
panic
box
like
over
the
there
old
for that
FBCon
reason.
does. KMSCon might also
That's a
end
stream
up
box.
supporting rotation and mouse and touchpads by the time Fedora 44 releases, which should make using it a bit easier as well. Now, Fedora will not completely remove FBCon for now. It's still going to be supported and present in the distro. Users can move back to FBCon if they prefer, and if KMSCon fails, it will actually fall back to FBCon, so there shouldn't be any loss of functionality.
Interesting.
Fedora will also split the KMSCon package to remove a dependency on OpenGL and Mesa drivers, so devices that don't have access to that will still be able to run it. Now, it's the usual Fedora move. They take something old that no one really was thinking about touching, and they replace it with something new, and they're just basically leading the way, and after a while, when they've done the testing, other distros tend to follow suit as well. Now,
I guess that's a
KMSCon
good
is
point
not
about
a
Fedora.
recent
I just don't
project.
like
I think
being
its
the
first
guinea
release
pig as
dates
much.
back to 2012,
But I hear good
so it's
things
not
about
like
Fedora.
it's a brand
I've
new
used it.
thing that will break everything. But yeah, it's the usual Fedora motto. They are leading edge, not necessarily bleeding edge, and I do like their approach and their model.
I
Now,
like
the
their
Open
approach
Document
better than our
Format
choosers.
Standard, or ODF, has been updated. This is, if you don't know, the file format used in LibreOffice, OnlyOffice, and plenty of others. Supposedly, it is the official standard for NATO and the European Commission.
Wait, really?
Microsoft Office also implements ODF, although it doesn't
I
default
did
to it,
not
and
know
in my experience,
that.
it doesn't support it all that well. The new version of
I did not
ODF
know
comes
NATO
for
had
the
a,
format's
you know,
20th
document
birthday,
format.
and it's not like it's a momentous
Standard.
event, because it's still pretty confidential whenever documents are shared. At least in my experience, I never worked at a single company that used ODF instead of Microsoft's formats. Still, the update improves support for assistive technologies. It also improves general formatting of documents. Apparently, it allows for better visually designed documents as well, and some additional features for data analysis and technical documentation are present. Of course, this new version of the standard remains compatible with older versions, so your documents aren't broken if you open them on a recent suite, and of course, it's just the specification of the format that has been updated. All Office suites that implement it will need to implement that new standard for those features to be available to users, so we'll see how long it takes and if it really changes anything. I honestly think ODF should be the default format,
I
because
agree.
Microsoft Office compatibility is what drags people back to Microsoft Office instead of being able to adopt LibreOffice,
Yep.
OnlyOffice, Collabora
I have
Office, or
Office
whatever
because
else.
I have a couple
If ODF
documents
was
I still have to
standard, the
use
only real problem will
that
be
don't work in
sometimes
LibreOffice.
adapting to a new UI, and I don't feel that
Doesn't even work
that
on the
interface
web version of
LibreOffice
Office
or
365.
OnlyOffice's interface is really worse than what Microsoft Office offers in a lot of respects. So if ODF was actually the standard that people used, I think our Office suites will have much more of a shot, but of course that's not what happens in the real world. But in the real world, you can at least get a Linux PC from our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. You all have heard about Tuxedo computers by now if you've listened to at least one episode of this show or watched any of my
I have
videos
one.
on YouTube. They are
a good
hardware
company.
manufacturer that makes
I
laptops
do
and
like my
desktops that
Tuxedo
run with
laptop.
Linux pre-installed. They're based in Germany, but they ship to most countries in the world, and they are basically the only manufacturer that
This
I
is
rely
the
upon
Stellar
these days to do
Slim 15.
anything. I run one of their laptops.
I have
on
a
their own Linux distro. I have one of their
Ryzen
desktops for gaming.
78845HS and an NVIDIA 4070, 96 gigs of RAM in this. This is a nice mobile workstation.
Fantastic. And they've even started upstreaming all of their work on all the additional little light bars, keyboard backlight control, and all of that stuff to the mainline Linux kernel, meaning you won't even need to add any of their repos to add support for those tiny little things. They're really cool. The link, as usual, is down in the description.
Are they budget friendly?
Anyway, thank you all for listening to this video or watching it if you weren't glued to your Subway Surfers on your phone.
So are they budget friendly? So they are still considered a small boutique company, like System 76, so they're a little bit more than, like, say, Lenovo, HP, and Dell, where you can get them really cheap, but they can have inexpensive models. But this one, I wouldn't say was cheap. This was $2,500 with a 3-year warranty. The custom logo application, that's not a sticker, they actually, like, silk screen that on, and they even put my logo on the super key, the start button. So $2,500, 3 years warranty, all the specs that I listed in there. I think it was a good value for me. Now, on lower end systems, I don't know how they fare, but everyone I know that's used them likes them. System 76 is another great company. I like to get companies that are working with Linux projects so that we can support the Linux, community and everything. Let's see. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break for a second. We'll be right back. Then we're going to watch a video on PayPal fees backfiring. Apparently there's issues with PayPal. So give me a minute and a half. Nature's calling. I'll be right back. All right, we are back. Had to grab some clothes out of the, not clothes, but my sheets. I was washing everything from getting the basement cleaned. All right, so we got another video. When milking fees backfires, why millions are deleting PayPal. Okay, granted, I don't like PayPal, but in a lot of, use cases, it's really all you have. Even I have to use it for the business needs and stuff like that. Would you be willing to go over the uses of a server? Well, it's very simple. A server is just there to serve data. It's very simple. So think of it this way, and then we'll get into the video. When you go to a restaurant, you place your order with a server. They then relay that information and then serve the food to you. That's basically what it is. Now, a server itself can be many different things. It can be a web server, it can be a file server, it could be, there's so many different use cases, but the idea is basically a device on a network that is serving data. That's a server at the, highest level. Now, beyond that, there's many different things you can talk about a server. Morning, I've been fiddling with Metasploit. Metasploit's kind of fun. Haven't done that in a minute.
PayPal is in trouble. Let's
see how PayPal's in trouble.
Behind the scenes, it's losing users fast. They've slashed thousands of jobs, their stock is down almost 80%, and for the first time ever, their user count is shrinking.
Interesting.
PayPal has pushed customers to the limit. Higher fees, worse service, and something much worse. But have people finally had enough of PayPal?
Well, what's the alternative? Because I think Venmo is owned by PayPal too.
The PayPal button has been everywhere. Essentially, a middleman that lets you pay quicker. When you go to a new website, there it is.
My PayPal and had PayPal credit.
All your card details.
Unfortunately, have to use PayPal.
Checks, and it's pretty convenient. No typing card numbers.
For my streaming stuff, there are some vendors that pay me through PayPal.
Yet, it's not just the button. PayPal is everywhere. They own Braintree for card processing. They do international transfers. There's also Venmo for peer-to-peer transfers.
I was right. They own Venmo.
Buy now, pay later with Pay in 4. They even dabbled in crypto and manage billions in online donations.
I still can't believe they did that.
Fused into the fabric of e-commerce. And the result? Massive.
Not that I'm against cryptocurrency,
PayPal still
it's just,
over 438 million active accounts. In 2025, they generated record revenue of $32 billion. If you're looking at a spreadsheet, everything looks fine, but there's much more going on here. PayPal became the internet's default checkout button, and that's where the problem began.
You want to buy some Linux? Send me some Cash App.
It's whether you've noticed yet. When a company reaches this level of presence, it stops having to compete on value.
I'm sorry, Vampire, but like Cash App, I don't know how else to say this, but people who actually use Cash App, they have a vibe. I feel like people who use Venmo are just like, I don't know. It's just the whole thing. I just don't like Cash App, and they're sketchy too in other ways, don't get me wrong.
It's charging what we call the ubiquity
Well, Abby,
tax.
the point still stands. You use Cash App, and you're kind of sketchy. I'm kidding. I have a Cash App. I just don't ever use it. I don't really know. I know maybe like one or two people that actually use it, but I don't see the point in using it. I don't see. Now, I think the problem a lot of people have with not just Cash App, but PayPal and all these other apps is you shouldn't be using them as a bank because they're not a bank, because they will screw you over. They can just take your money, unlike a bank where you can actually hold them accountable. And right now, with Trump not allowing the CFPB to do its thing, that's no bueno. I don't know. I've had bad vibes with Cash App. I just have. I have it. I've used it very few times, but yeah.
PayPal's value proposition is convenience and peace of mind, and they're pushing the peace of mind as far as they can. If you're a merchant, the core online rate is already steep, 3.49% plus 49 cents for a standard US transaction.
I'd rather people tip me in cryptocurrency. Not because I'm a crypto bro, I'm just being honest. The fees on PayPal are kind of
often between 3
horrible.
and 4% of the total.
I use it to buy stuff with a card.
On one transaction.
You can actually use Cash App for stuff like that?
Trying to get your money out, there are more.
That's what I use PayPal for, so I don't have to use my actual credit card.
1.75% right off the top. If you're cashing out frequently, you're paying a steady, invisible tax just to access your own money. But then comes the real sting, when things go wrong. Disputes and chargebacks carry heavy penalties. PayPal slaps merchants with a dispute fee and a commonly cited $20 chargeback fee in the US, regardless of who wins.
Hey, this shit really pissed me off, okay? So I had an incident one time. I was using Ko-fi for, Ko-fi, whatever you call it. And I had a person that, was tipping me, and they did a monthly tip. They actually went to their bank to do a chargeback because they set up a monthly tip, and they meant it to be a one-time fee. I had to fight the processor and say, look, they set up a recurring fee here. I did not force them into this. There are no dark patterns. It was clear as day. Monthly, one time. They chose the monthly. And then they couldn't figure out how to cancel their own thing. Like, dude, that's not on me. And I had to fight for a month and a half because they were giving me $5. They charged back for like 4 times. So it ended up costing me not just the $20 that he got back, but $20 per each incident. I got my money back. They didn't charge me the chargeback fee because I proved he didn't do what needed to be done on his side. And that's why I don't like a lot of the modern payment systems we have. Yes, I do understand why you need to have a chargeback there. There are shady vendors out there. But there are also, it's screwing over smaller businesses from people that just don't want to take accountability from the things that they need to do. And ultimately, their bank sided with me because I said, look, it's not my fault. They forgot their own login to their Ko-fi, which they revealed. And then eventually I worked with them where I'm like, look, you go here, you request a reset, you do that. I had to spend several days. Now imagine you're a business that has a lot more customers and do that. That's what's horrible about this stuff.
And as the fees rose, the perks vanished. They cut the popular Return Shipping on Us program in late 2022. For users outside the US, they even introduced inactivity fees.
Wait,
up to
what?
€10 if your account sits dormant after just 1 year. All these fees might be tolerable if the customer service was exceptional. If PayPal is by far the best, it's okay to pay them a bit more. You're paying for security, peace of mind, and safety, right? Well, the reality is quite different. PayPal's customer service is awful. On the Better Business Bureau, PayPal has a rating of a 1.1 out of 5.
Good God, I did not know they were that bad.
PayPal keeps locking accounts seemingly for no reason. A large transfer, a new country.
Admittedly, I had to use the CFPB on my personal PayPal a couple times to get them to rectify things.
Or sometimes, simply no reason. Phoning or emailing support does nothing. Users often have to wait for months to have it reopened, and in some cases, years. Imagine having your bank account with your funds in it unavailable for months. You suddenly can't access your cash.
That is literally why I have it set up to auto-withdraw any money in there into the bank account within 24 hours.
Way beyond this.
I don't park money in PayPal. F that.
Is safe and secure, right?
In and out, in and out. Same with my cryptocurrency. I don't leave it in exchange.
Paradise. For example, a fake seller ships you a box with nothing in it but gives it a tracking number. Yet, even when you realize you've been scammed, PayPal has proof of delivery. For
Oh,
all
yeah, I've
goods
heard of
under
stuff like that.
$750, aka those that don't require signatures, PayPal will often side with the scammer.
Yep.
In their view, you already got your item. How can you prove you don't have your item if it was tracked? Take a photo of an empty box? But that's just one method. Scammers will use the friends and family method, which dodges purchase protection. Or they'll send a real PayPal invoice saying something alarming like, incoming $168 charge, call now, but sneakily attach their support email. PayPal feels like a more expensive and worse platform. But what if the problem isn't just cost? What if the problem is power? PayPal has been dominant online for many years.
Cash App
and
allows
as their power
Bitcoin.
grew,
I'd rather use my
so
own
did something
Bitcoin
else.
wallet.
They stopped feeling like a
It's
neutral
not my own
platform
wallet.
just moving money from A to B. It started feeling like a gatekeeper that could lock you out whenever it wanted. And
Yep.
it goes beyond locking all those accounts too. A 2023 consumer suit alleged that PayPal's merchant terms prevented sellers from encouraging customers to use cheaper payment options. The company was actively working to stop merchants from helping you save money. The anti-steering case was dismissed in late 2025. The court allowed plaintiffs to amend the complaint, so the fight is far from over. And it reveals what's really going on, which is not that surprising. PayPal wants to be the one and only gateway. The real source of user anxiety is simpler: control over your own money. For sellers, PayPal's terms allows them to hold funds for up to 21 days, but sometimes even longer.
Yeah,
This
I've
is
had to deal with that
different from
crap.
locking accounts. They can impose a safety buffer reviewed on a 180-day cycle, meaning if you run a small business making a few $1,000s in sales, PayPal can decide to hold some
I've
of
had
that
a
money
buddy
for
go
90
through
days.
that.
For
They
a
held
brand new business owner or
$15,000
seller, a 21-day
hostage for
hold, or
180
in many
days.
cases, 90 days can be the difference between paying suppliers and going out of business. This is if
Yeah,
they
it hurt
determine
him
you are a
hard.
high-risk business, but the process feels very arbitrary. For one, this is typically instances of 10%, but sometimes PayPal becomes a bit of a tyrant. In one case in the UK, PayPal held 90% of a charity's income back, yet these
Wait,
were
what?
held in February and only released in July. Much longer than 21 or even 90 days. The charity thought this was extreme, but PayPal disagreed. Unfortunately for PayPal, they were ordered to pay 8% in compensation for their incredibly disproportionate reserve limit. But
At least they
PayPal's
made a
tyranny
profit on
seems to
that.
go much deeper. The final straw for many was the infamous misinformation fiasco in October 2022.
Oh?
A policy update was briefly published suggesting that users could face steep financial damages, up to $2,500 for
I
prohibited
forgot
activities.
about that.
Nothing abnormal there, except this includes vaguely defined terms like misinformation. These were identified by sending, posting, or publication of any messages, content, or materials promoting
Okay, that's bad.
and customers could have to pay damages of up to $2,500 each time. The backlash
Each time?
was
What?
massive. Even the US Consumer Financial Protection Bureau began to investigate. It caused their stock price to tumble. PayPal's former president, David Marcus, even said, "It goes against everything I believe in." PayPal wasn't just moving money anymore. They were, allegedly, threatening to reach into your account and fine you for posting the wrong thing.
What?
PayPal quickly walked it back.
That's some
It
bull.
was an error. But it's hard to believe terms like these were an error.
Wasn't an error.
It
You just
seems
got
like
caught
they
with the
only
pants
walked it
down.
back because they had gone too far. But the damage was irreversible. For many, this was the wake-up call that confirmed their fears. PayPal saw itself not just as a payment processor, but as a moral arbitrator. With the power to reach into your account and extract money based on subjective rules, it was no longer just expensive, it was authoritarian. With
I've said that
rising
for a
fees,
minute.
terrible service, and a complete loss of trust, users are beginning to move.
But to where? Like, what are
For
the
longest
alternatives
time, PayPal
in
was
most
the
places?
default.
You
But
can't receive
it
money
feels
on
like that's
PayPal
changing.
in Anguilla.
After the
Really?
misinformation disaster, PayPal's user counts peaked and began to decline for the first time in their entire history. Only a bit for now, but it shows us something major. The tide is shifting and beginning to move away from PayPal. The first major front is cross-border payments. Users are moving to services that are cheaper, faster, and far more convenient.
Well, I guess
And
Apple
there
Pay
are
is
many
taking over
alternatives.
what a lot of
This
PayPal used
to
to
be
do and
PayPal's
stuff.
lucrative playground, but companies like Wise and Payoneer have completely redefined the game.
Never heard of them.
Wise built a massive business on a single transparent promise: the real exchange rate, a low upfront fee, and instant transfer speed. Over 15.6 million customers now move over £145 billion a year through Wise. About 65% of their transfers land in 20 seconds or less. It's
Interesting.
faster than PayPal, but also has lower fees and better mid-market exchange rates. Just to be clear, this video is not sponsored by Wise, but it shows that the market has changed. You don't need to use PayPal. And this is just the beginning. The biggest threat isn't a competitor, it's the evolution of the hardware in your pocket. The yellow branded checkout growth is stalling. This is one of
Payoneer
PayPal's
that have a lot of
best
scanners? Oh,
profit
yeah.
engines, but it only grew by about 5%,
You
which
can
is
use
already down from
Payoneer
the
in
previous quarters.
Anguilla.
It doesn't
Okay.
sound like much, but this was enough to cause the share price to drop 8%. Analysts were
Wait, what was that he said?
but this, which is already down PayPal's best profit engines, but it only grew by about 5%, which is already down from the previous quarters. It doesn't sound like much, but this was enough to cause the share price to drop 8%. Analysts were underwhelmed because the unbranded processing volume also slowed
Payoneer is an
dramatically,
Israeli
dropping
company.
from nearly 30% growth to
It
just
is what it is.
2%. There are two reasons driving this. First, Shopify is steering its massive
Look, I'm in
user base to
cybersecurity.
its own
If I
integrated
were to
solution,
say I wouldn't use any Israeli
Second,
company,
merchants are
I couldn't
prioritizing
do
other
my
buttons
job.
and listing them above PayPal. They highlight whatever is cheapest and converts buyers the best. Sometimes this is Shopify, but also another option: device wallets, Apple Pay, and Google Pay. These solutions are preloaded, require zero login, and sit right in the thumb zone of your screen. Even if PayPal is fast, you have to wait for another window to open, which sometimes requires a login and then several more steps. Google Pay and
Yeah, that is a good point. Because there are times when, if given the choice of PayPal and I see there's Apple Pay as an option, I will gladly open up the website on my iPhone and pay on my iPhone rather than PayPal. The pecking order basically is, for me, Apple Pay, priority. PayPal is a secondary choice. Direct credit card transfer, final. I do not like to put my credit card on websites for payments whenever possible. PayPal and Apple Pay at least allow me some level of protection. But yeah.
Apple Pay feel instant. When a customer is
Been
ready
using
to buy
Wise for
the
years. My
quickest
Japanese
one-tap
proxy
solution
uses it for me to
always
transfer
wins.
money for them.
PayPal is now
Interesting.
slower and less convenient than the default wallet built into your phone, and more people are spending money from their phone. In fact, 70% of all e-commerce purchases during the 2022 holiday season were made on
Made for my
smartphones.
rewards card to
and
be used on Google
That seems
Wallet.
to be rising. PayPal isn't going to disappear overnight. They're too massive, too embedded in millions of stores, but things do seem to be slipping. The core engines of their business, the high-margin features that once made them indispensable, are quietly breaking down. They're losing ground because they've become slower, more expensive, and less reliable than the competition. They got comfortable. They made you pay a premium
I'd
for the
explore
privilege of
Wise.
using
I
a
would.
system that no longer works
Do they
in your
support
favor.
YubiKey?
The PayPal tax isn't going anywhere, but users are. Unlike PayPal, this channel is still growing, and we're closing in on 1 million subscribers. If you haven't subscribed already, I would really appreciate it if you did. If you're using PayPal, you're paying more for worse service when there are so many better alternatives. Will PayPal see this exodus and actually change something, or is this the beginning of a slow,
I don't think they're gonna
painful
change.
demise? Only time.
Yeah, I think it's going to
will
be
tell.
painful.
Another giant company that people
Which
are
app
leaving
store
in
is Wise
droves
on?
is Adobe. Check out this video to learn more, but until then,
Let's see. It should be on the Apple App Store. App Store. Let's see. Search. Wise. Yeah, it's on the App Store. An Apple. It's definitely on Android if it's on the Apple App Store. I'm gonna get that app, and then I'm gonna set it up later. Just so I can have it. Because if that's where people are going, I'm interested. Plan to make a banking app for my local bank next year. Oh, nice. I wonder what that entails for you, because I know over here the legislation is intense. Well, not legislation, the regulation. Okay, satellites leak your data. A video from Satanic. I think we got time for 2, maybe 3 videos. Alright.
A few $100s of consumer-grade hardware is all that's standing in the way of you tapping into satellites and reading people's texts, listening to their phone calls.
Yeah, we
and
talked
even
about this
spying
at
on
DEF
military
CON.
Communications. Also in your Hacking News Roundup, holding toddlers to ransom goes badly wrong, and is your mouse spying on you? But first, half of the data transmitted by these things is unencrypted, apparently. It's long been known that the security of satellite communication is questionable. Here's a warning by the NSA from 3 years ago, advising of unfixed vulnerabilities and a general lack of encryption. But exactly how big of a problem we have on our hands hasn't been clear, well, until now. Researchers got curious, so they put together a setup consisting of off-the-shelf parts. Nothing expensive or hard to get, this is all consumer-grade gear costing just a few $100s. Then they simply scanned the sky. From their location in North America, the researchers were able to grab data from dozens of satellites, and this is totally passive, by the way. You just point the dish at the sky and download the data. There's no authentication, and importantly, there's no hacking involved here at all. And the results were somewhat disturbing. T-Mobile was a pretty big offender here, which shouldn't be too surprising.
God damn it, T-Mobile! Can't you do anything right?
Given their track record on security, the researchers were able to quite literally grab plaintext SMSs and raw voice call contents. From just a 9-hour recording, they observed thousands of phone calls and messages and were able to grab all the juicy metadata. From AT&T, they grabbed users' raw internet traffic. From a Mexican telecom company, they grabbed the plaintext contents of users' VoIP calls. In-flight Wi-Fi is also at risk. The researchers were able to grab the browsing data of passengers, but given a
That's probably go-go. Uh-huh.
Of course, most websites add their own layer of encryption. Your data here is safe. Well, apart from DNS lookups, which leak whatever spicy websites you happen to be browsing. Walmart...
Hold up.
uses satellite links. Researchers observed unencrypted logins to their inventory management system, leaking plaintext credentials, but also, remarkably, the contents of internal corporate emails. The Mexican government and military is also on the list, with researchers downloading data on law enforcement operations, narcotics activities, and even real-time military object telemetry, which I'm guessing refers to the movement of aircraft and ships. Overall, 50%
Makes you
of
wonder
the
if the
satellite
cartel
links
is
that were
aware of this
surveyed
and is like
contained
listening
clear
in.
text traffic. But
Well, now
given
they
the
are.
Earth is not in fact flat, only satellites in view of North America could be tested, so the rest of the world has escaped scrutiny on this occasion. The problem here, or at least part of the problem, is that by default these things do not encrypt data. They're just relay stations, very big and expensive Wi-Fi repeaters in space, so to speak.
Pretty much.
So if you send them unencrypted data, they will just relay that unencrypted data. Many satellite vendors do offer encryption capabilities, but this often comes at an extra
Write down
cost.
videos
So
on my
many
network before
organizations
going
will see
anywhere.
this as optional and totally skip
Oh, I
it.
do the same.
But you can't blame the satellites here, any more than you can blame an Ethernet cable for not encrypting your data.
I also
It's
don't
on the
want to pay
user
for
to implement
in-flight
their own
Wi-Fi half
end-to-end
the time.
encryption. The findings of the research were
I
disclosed
might have
to the
some more
affected
fun satellite
organizations.
videos. Ooh, that'll
T-Mobile
be
in
nice.
particular was quick to enable encryption after they were given a heads up, but there's no word on anyone else. This is a classic example of security through obscurity, as in just hoping your system is complicated enough that someone won't go to the effort of figuring out how it works. But in some cases that approach did kinda work. The researchers weren't able to decode some data because it used some proprietary protocol that they just didn't understand, but that doesn't mean the next guy to come along won't have more luck. The good news
Right.
is that the vast majority of the internet never even touches a satellite, but rather gets piped through a huge network of undersea cables. Satellites only pick up the slack when a really long cable isn't so practical. I'll make sure to link the full research down in the description, and also linked down below is today's sponsor, Delete Me. Ever Googled yourself and
I like
found your full
Delete
name,
Me. I
address,
use
and
them.
phone number listed on some sketchy
I think I'm
people
still
search site?
affiliated with them.
Welcome to the world
But
of
I've been
data
using them for
brokers,
like
a delightful
15
bunch
years.
of rather shady companies that quietly scrape your data from a
I've
whole
tested a lot
variety
of other
sources
data,
before bundling
deletion
it up and
services,
selling it
and
on to anyone
they
willing to
still
pay.
take
A
the
practice which is
jobs.
totally legal, by the way. But Delete Me can help you fight back. Just complete a quick profile so Delete Me knows what to look for. Then within 7 days, they'll compile a personalized report detailing what they found. And best of all, Delete Me automatically requests removal of the data
It's
on your
cheapest
behalf.
if you pay for 2
And so
years
long
at
as
a
you stay
time like I
subscribed,
do.
they'll keep checking and keep removing, periodically creating new reports so you can keep tabs on the whole process. And if you find your data on a site that Delete Me can't by default remove data from, you can shoot off a custom request to your personal privacy advisor, an actual real human person, by the way, who will make it their mission to have your data deleted.
I've
this
actually
year,
used that
Wirecutter
feature
named
quite a
Delete Me
bit,
as their
'cause I
top pick
find
for
different data
removal
brokers.
services. Delete Me is giving you all 20% off their eligible plans with my link in the description. Delete Me is also international, serving multiple countries. Just make sure to click the correct link in the description to take back
Oh,
control
they've
of your
added a
data
lot more. I
today.
remember they used to only do
Next
the
up,
UK.
cybercriminals have learnt the hard way that you don't go after children. Kiddo is a global chain of nurseries with quite a few of them right here in the UK. But along came Radiance Group, a brand new ransomware gang. They bought access to a Kiddo employee's computer from some other cybercriminal and used it to access Kiddo's family account. Family is a platform that some nurseries use to handle all the data they have on their children. You can track attendance, write
I do not
reports.
like
It's
where
an
this is
all-in-one
going.
solution. And Kiddo's account was now in the hands of Radiant, who, rather predictably, exported as much data as they could from it. They posted to their dark web leak site groveling about how Kiddo wasn't paying the ransom, but then they started leaking the stolen data, names,
Oh,
dates of birth, and even
no.
photos of some of the 8,000 children's data they'd stolen. And by the way, the
Oh,
pixelating in this screenshot,
that's
that was
low.
done by me. Radiant had exposed these kids to all kinds of internet creepers and caused this story to totally blow up in mainstream media. BBC News contacted Radiant asking if they felt bad about, weaponizing toddlers for extortion, to which they replied, we're not asking for an enormous amount. We deserve some compensation for our pen test.
That ain't
They
a
were
pen
after
test, that's a crime.
£600,000 in Bitcoin, but Kiddo still wasn't playing ball, so
600,000.
the hackers resorted to quite literally calling the parents of the kids. After all, they had all their contact information from the breach, encouraging them to put pressure on Kiddo to pay up, or else all their children's data would be
That
leaked.
is F.
But there was a slight problem for Radiant. Because they were so new, Kiddo was quite literally their first victim, they didn't know one of the unwritten rules of cybercrime. Try not to
Don't
make
mess
a
with
scene.
kids.
If you go after kids, critical infrastructure, or hospitals, then mainstream media is bound to pick up the story, and all of a sudden, law enforcement is now very motivated to make an example of you. Radiant realized this eventually, and
So I've actually heard of stories where they've actually found, we actually, took out a hospital and then would hand over the encryption key and be like, sorry, my bad. And just not even charge them. It's an unwritten rule. You don't mess with hospitals, infrastructure, and kids.
mostly backtracked. They removed all the data from their leak site, giving the crappy excuse that one of their affiliates had gone and done this without their authorization. They also spoke to the media, saying how sorry they are and that they've deleted all the stolen data. But this came way too late. Police were already onto them, and 2 17-year-old boys were arrested and remain in custody for questioning. Next up, your
Always
mouse
some
might not
prick
just be some
teenager,
innocent
isn't it?
peripheral after all. Researchers have figured out how to turn mice into covert spy devices. The premise here is that recently mice have advanced to the point where their sensors are so sensitive that they can quite literally act as microphones and be used to record
What?
nearby conversations.
Well, I guess it makes sense, a
The
laser
researchers
mic.
are calling this the Mickey Mouse attack, and it works like this. When you speak near a mouse, the sound of your voice vibrates your table, which the sensor in your mouse detects as what looks like unintelligible noise. But after the researchers put this through their special blend of signal processing and machine learning, they were able to recover their original audio with a surprising degree of accuracy. Here's what this all sounds like in practice.
1, 2.
1, 2, 3, 4. Sure,
I mean,
it's not the clearest thing in the world.
but that raw audio, I mean, I've heard worse on ham radio.
Definitely not going to start recording these videos with my Razer mouse anytime soon, but the recovered audio is accurate enough to make out what's being said. But exactly how accurate depends on things like how loud you're talking to your mouse, the surface it sits on, and more importantly, how sensitive the sensor in your mouse is. The researchers tested a whole array of mice, finding that mice with a DPI of over 20,000 are vulnerable here. And given the technological progress curve of mice over the past few years, generally speaking, mice made after 2020 are way more likely to be vulnerable. So if you're still rocking your IntelliMouse from 2003, you can breathe a sigh of
I remember
relief.
those.
But if you have got something a bit more modern, for an attacker to do this, they would of course need to infect your PC with malware, but that challenge is made easier by the fact that security software isn't anywhere near as protective about reading mouse input compared to your actual microphone. This Mickey Mouse attack is an example
Yeah,
of a
not
side
really
channel
unless you're an
attack, as in an
enterprise
attack that exploits
and then
unintentional
locking it
data
down
leakage
to
from the normal
serials.
operation of something. Every few months, some obscure new side channel attack makes the news, but like most of those, this Mickey Mouse attack realistically won't see much use by hackers in the real world.
Probably
There's
not,
quite
yeah.
a few different variables that could totally derail this attack, and practically speaking, it's hard to see how you'd ever be able to exploit this at any meaningful scale. That being said, intelligence agencies are known to go to extreme lengths to make the weirdest of bugs, so who knows, maybe Mickey Mouse has a future with a 3-letter agency. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.
Interesting. Okay, so we got another satanic video. This one... hacking hard to track any WhatsApp or Signal user?
Reactions and delivery receipts aren't as
Oh,
innocent as they might
reactions.
seem.
Okay.
Researchers have revealed how they can be used for
Yep.
surveillance.
Oh, that...
Aren't as innocent as they might seem. Researchers have
I was there. I watched this talk. That was a good talk. I wasn't at that talk because, like, the main talks are always, like, so busy. But, like, you can watch that live on Twitch and YouTube. So, like, the next DEF CON, if you can't make it, make an effort to go watch their main talks on stream. That's actually why I don't go and see a lot of the main talks, because I know I can watch them later. But some of the best talks are in the smaller villages and all that aren't recorded.
how they can be used for surveillance, revealing what time you leave your house every morning, when you arrive at work, when you're in the middle of a phone call, and even what kind of phone you're using. This affects almost everyone using Signal or WhatsApp. It requires no malware and can all be done silently. Also in your hacking news roundup, Wi-Fi hacking on a plane just cost a super creepy guy 7 years in prison. But first, for someone to exploit this, it only requires that they know your phone number. It was discovered by researchers at the University of Vienna, raising the alarm in their paper, Careless Whisper. So when you send a message, it's first sent to a WhatsApp or Signal server, and you get your first checkmark. But only when the message actually reaches the recipient do you get a second checkmark, which acts as your delivery receipts. Now, on the surface, this only reveals when your message was received, but by timing how long this process takes, you can reveal a scary amount of information about the recipient. There is a bit of an explanation coming up here, but stick with me because this is really very cool. First, let's take the most basic example, where a sender can determine what state your phone is in. Is it locked, unlocked, or have you got WhatsApp open? We'll be using WhatsApp as an example going forward, but all this applies to Signal too. In the researcher's demonstration here, the victim phone starts off as locked, all the while it's being constantly spammed with messages by an attacker, with each blue dot representing the time taken for the attacker to receive their delivery receipt. But when the phone is unlocked, the time taken goes way down, and when it's locked again, it goes straight back up. But when WhatsApp is actually open, the delivery receipts are received almost instantly. This makes it really easy for an attacker to differentiate between whether a victim's phone is locked, unlocked, or if WhatsApp is open. But if the victim is being spammed, why aren't they getting any notifications? Rather than regular messages, the researchers are spamming reactions. These also generate delivery receipts, but don't generate notifications. Well, at least they don't when you react to your own message. On top of that, using open source WhatsApp clients, they're able to send reactions to messages that just don't even exist, resulting in a victim phone just discarding them, with the user having no idea that they're being spammed, making this totally invisible. And on WhatsApp, there's no rate limiting, making it possible to send one reaction every 50 milliseconds. That's 20 reactions per second, but rate limiting on Signal limited them to just 1 per second. And by the way, unlike read receipts, delivery receipts cannot be turned off because they're integral to the way that these apps work. And it doesn't matter whether a message is coming from someone in your contacts or a total stranger, your phone will still send delivery receipts. Other than being able to tell what state a phone is in...
Well, it's a good thing I use a totally different number than my phone number, because I always thought there could be stuff like this happening.
Samsung and Xiaomi all have on average slightly different response times. And an attacker can also tell whether you're currently on Wi-Fi or using cellular. On Wi-Fi, the ping time is very predictable.
Right.
However, on cellular,
makes sense.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
And you can even see some very concentrated activity here. That's when the victim had the app open and we're in the middle of a phone call. This whole chart can be generated for almost any WhatsApp or Signal user with only knowledge of their phone number. And if you use desktop clients, that only multiplies the problem. Thanks to the way encryption is handled, each of your devices generates its own read receipts, so an attacker can grab the same data for them and overlay this information, showing which devices are currently able to send read receipts and therefore which devices are online. All this activity is from a willing participant, or so the researchers tell us. We can see when someone's home PC is on and exactly when they turn it off, and the same thing for their work laptop, making it really easy to work out where this person physically is throughout the day. Are
That's
they at
a bit
home,
scary.
work, or somewhere in between? Remember, no malware is needed here. You only need to know someone's phone number, making it easy to put together a detailed map of someone's daily activities, the kind of thing that would give three-letter agencies a wet dream. And if an attacker used the previous WhatsApp exploit we saw in a recent video, they could leverage a single image of someone's face to grab their phone number and then use this latest vulnerability to spy on their habits. An attacker could also use this to infer connections between a whole list of targets, like if two people consistently had the app open at the same time, you could
Like I keep telling y'all, tin cans and string, most secure way to communicate.
Forget about the surveillance for a second. Remember the zero rate limits on WhatsApp? By constantly spamming reactions, an attacker could really inflate your phone bill, eating through data at a rate of 13 gigabytes per hour.
Oh,
Which
jeez!
would also annihilate your battery at a rate of up to 18% per hour. And you'd have no idea, because again, this is all done silently. But this isn't as much of a problem on Signal, because thanks to rate limiting, an attacker could only cost you 360
Yay! Thank God I don't use WhatsApp.
Topic. Did our techno overlords care about the problem? No, they didn't. Both Meta and Signal were informed in September 2024. Meta responded with just a copy-paste message, but fell silent until a whole year later when they provided an update that the reports had now been forwarded to the relevant team. As for Signal, the researchers didn't hear anything back at all. But there are preventative steps you can take. On Signal, change your phone number privacy settings so no one can find you using it. As for WhatsApp, they recently introduced a new privacy setting under Advanced, which lets you block high volumes of messages from unknown accounts. It's unclear if this was introduced in response to this attack method, and we don't know if it even prevents the kind of attack that uses sneaky invisible reactions. But enabling it is free, so you might as well. The researchers gave a DEFCON talk on this, which I'll make sure to link down in the description.
That was a good talk.
A guy has just been sentenced to 7 years in prison for Wi-Fi hacking on a plane. If this gives you deja vu, we did briefly take a look at this story last year, but now we have a lot more details. This began in a flight over Australia, when airline employees noticed a suspicious Wi-Fi network. It looks like some kind of a clone of their actual in-flight Wi-Fi, but when you connected to this one, the captive portal offered you free internet if you logged in with social media. Far too generous by airline standards, and in reality, it was just a fake login page designed to grab your credentials, making this a textbook example of an evil twin Wi-Fi attack. The airline radioed this into police, who after landing, searched people's bags until they found the one guy with one of these things in his carry-on. It might look like some kind of a Wi-Fi hacking device, and that's because it most definitely is. After
Yep,
seizing and
Wi-Fi
analysing his
pineapple.
devices, police found this wasn't his first attempt at Wi-Fi hacking. He'd done the same thing on other flights and at various airports across Australia. But why grab random people's social media credentials? Well, he'd log into their accounts, specifically targeting women, apparently, monitoring their communications and stealing their nudes. And this seems to have been quite a hobby for the guy, because police found thousands of intimate images and videos, and to make matters worse, we can clearly see from the body cam that we're not dealing with some hormonal 16-year-old who's watched one too many hacking tutorials, but rather a fully grown 44-year-old man, who, keen on making things worse for himself, just a day later started deleting files from his cloud storage and even unsuccessfully tried to remotely wipe his phone, earning him a couple extra charges for the attempted destruction of evidence. He also tried to spy on meetings between the police and his employer, but law enforcement aren't telling us much about this, only that he used a software tool to do it and that the meetings were supposed to be confidential. Eventually, the man pled guilty to a whole array of charges and will spend the next 7 years and 4 months in prison. At most, free Wi-Fi might try to milk an email address out of you, but having to log in to any third-party account should be a huge red flag.
Yep.
However, in their press release, Australian police wrongly seem to think that using a VPN is some kind of a defense for this.
It's not!
As always, thanks for watching.
Like, don't get me wrong, VPNs are useful in public internet. But we're talking about a completely fake network that you log in and your handy credentials to. It doesn't help, because you'd be logging in to their fake page, but yeah. Okay, we got time for one more video. It's something about Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll did their biggest mistake yet, and everyone is upset about it. What did they do?
So what's this? Crunchyroll is officially ending their free ad-supported streaming service on December 31st, 2025. This service allowed people without a subscription to watch certain anime for free on Crunchyroll with ads. Well, I called it, I knew it, and I think everybody honestly kind of saw this eventually happening.
I paid for Crunchyroll, so
This is the consequences for Crunchyroll, or in this case, Sony, having a monopoly on anime in the West. Yes, they have some competition like HiDive, Amazon, and Netflix to an extent, but overall, it really is a Crunchyroll-dominated space. When it comes to very overwhelming popular series and what becomes trending or talked about in the West, usually the anime is on Crunchyroll to some degree. And with Sony buying out basically a lot of different competitors, for instance, buying Crunchyroll, buying Funimation, buying Right Stuff, and probably setting their sights eventually on Viz Media and maybe even kind of putting HiDive out of business, it's just going to get more and more apparent that Crunchyroll has a monopoly over anime. And they are so entwined with even production of some anime in Japan that it's most likely causing even a lot of series to get censored upon the production stage of just the initial stage of
I've been
creation.
seeing that.
But before we go into that topic, the point of the matter is we need to talk about what this is, what this means, is it good, is it bad, what does this mean for the future, and how does this affect those that don't even use Crunchyroll. So first off, this entire move from Crunchyroll is more or less a systematic effect of the monopoly that they have, because at this point, Crunchyroll doesn't really have any competition. Like I already pointed out,
You can go to
HiDive is one of
Hulu
their
and
main
Netflix, but
competitors,
meh.
and they're not doing so hot. Just to be completely honest, they have a lot of their series being taken away from them and being bought and licensed by Crunchyroll now. I believe Oshinoko is getting taken away from HiDive, which is a pretty big deal, because that's like one of the bigger series that they've gotten in the last few years, besides gushing over Magical Girls. But the point is that Crunchyroll removing this feature is eventually going to probably cause prices to rise and get exponentially
Well, of course,
higher.
they want to make
Like,
more
let's
money.
give a good example of this. Think of Netflix. Think of Amazon. You know, a lot of different subscription services. I believe Disney does it as well. But they start raising prices. They say they need to raise subscription prices by $5 or $10, and eventually, as it gets astronomically high, they offer you a cheap deal for a lower cost, but you have to watch ads with the said episodes or movies. And I feel like that's more or less what Crunchyroll is designing this for. It's a push to eventually
Yeah,
have
I
a
remember when you didn't have
subscription
any
tier with
ads at all.
being
Now you get the
supported,
ad-supported
and if you want
lines.
to get rid of the ads, you're going to have to pay a higher subscription fee, which will give them justification to raise the prices even more. Because this is what effectively happens with a monopoly. If there is no competition, then these companies can more or less do whatever they want, gouge and get as much money out of a rock as they possibly can, and that's more or less what they're doing. They are now pushing forward, trying to make as much money as possible, cutting off free access to the site, and forcing people to pay a subscription. And I'm going to be honest here,
This
you
is
can
going to be very unfortunate.
whatever you want to do, but I see in the next year, maybe 2 years, Crunchyroll is going to add
I think there was something that just happened to High Dive as well.
Ads associated with it, and it's going to act like it's a deal because it's cheaper, but in reality, if you want to get rid of the ads, you're going to have to pay an even higher price than you are currently with their premium subscription. So how does this actually affect everyone? Well, first of all, it affects those that have tried to legally watch anime. I know this seems like kind of a crazy thing, but there is people that legitimately, despite all the issues with Crunchyroll, people will go to Crunchyroll to watch anime for one big reason: convenience. If a lot of your titles are there
why I do it.
once, and it's there upon airing, for the most part, I mean, Crunchyroll has a lot of issues with delayed episodes or translations, subtitles.
Yeah, that's a whole other problem.
But when it does work, it is a little bit
They
more
were great with
convenient than a pirate
Gachikatsu.
site
Now it's
sometimes.
like
that might spam
2
ads
weeks
your way.
behind.
But now that Crunchyroll is doing this move, I feel like this is going to incentivize more people to pirate anime, watch more pirated versions of anime, because those that were using the site in a legal way to watch this will no longer use the site. So that alienates a big
I
chunk
stopped
that could be
pirating
customers
just
to
so I
go to
could
pirate
actually
sites, because if they're already
pay
watching
for it,
for
and it was
free,
more
they're not gonna
convenient.
wanna
But if
pay
it
for the
ends up being
service,
just
so
as
they're just
bad,
gonna go to like
yeah.
any big major pirate sites to watch what they want. So the main point here I'm trying to get at is that Crunchyroll is alienating a chunk of their potential customers, people that might eventually buy a subscription for their service, is now being forced off their site to potentially go and
I know
watch a
I'm
pirated version.
rethinking several
That's
streaming
kind of a stupid move
services
on
because it's
Crunchyroll's
just
part,
too expensive.
and it makes me believe that they're more or less moving away from that system because there's a lot more money to be made to just directly, paying for a subscription service. And I feel like they're going to double dip into this, like I already mentioned. They're going to add a certain tier of subscription that's going to have ads associated with it. A bunch of other companies are already doing this, so it's most likely going to be the case. And it's going to, once again, reinstate that it's going to be inconvenient for people to use the site, because it's like, why would I want to be spammed by ads from an official service I'm paying for when I could just go to a pirate site, have some ad blocker, and just go watch it just fine, and it has the same quality or sometimes even better quality than what Crunchyroll has to offer. So the big point here
Yeah,
is
the ads
is that
kinda-
this
I
is
mean,
a
the
really
subtitles
questionable move by
kinda
Crunchyroll,
suck
but
on
it
Crunchyroll
makes
at times.
sense because of the monopoly. They can afford it. They can get away with this because no competition means you can
That's
nickel
what
and dime
Netflix
people
did
as
for a
much
while.
as you want. It's a really sad day, honestly. This
Mm-hmm.
affects a lot of people, thousands upon thousands of people. I believe there is a lot of people that have used this service and watched legally through this for many, many years. And now that's going away, man, it's kind of a bad idea. I think that this is kind of anti-consumer and just pushes people way down into the darkness of the internet.
I agree
but
with
Crunchyroll
that.
is always a company that does a lot of bad things and stupid mistakes, etc. Now, there is one thing I do want to talk about, which is a rumor at this time, and there is no official source I can use to back this up. But I have talked with someone that is an insider, in the industry that is associated with Crunchyroll to a degree, and I'm not going to name them because I want to keep them, unnamed. I feel like it would be a very bad thing if their name got out there, but they told me that Crunchyroll is not doing so hot in Japan, and what I mean by that is that apparently Crunchyroll is looked upon as a black company, for instance, a company that is not really good in Japan's eyes. They don't
really?
associate with them with the bad blood they have with them, how they handle certain things or licensing. Apparently,
Interesting.
there is, problems in Japan, and Crunchyroll even had a meeting about a month and a half, 2 months ago in Japan, like some of their executives, with people in Japan, with different studios and companies, etc. And Crunchyroll is kind of being, kind of crapped
Trying
on
to
by a
adjust
lot of
my
people in
damn
Japan.
chair.
They don't like them. So I feel like maybe this move is to try to win back over maybe some corporations or companies in Japan, or in this case make more money, because maybe they're not doing as financially as well as we thought they did because of some of the stupid decisions that they have been making. It's a very likely possibility, and if that rumor is indeed the case and it's not like, fake or whatever, then obviously
I didn't know
can
that
see some
it was
dark
that
days
bad
ahead
for
which
Crunchyroll
is
over in
technically
Japan.
a good thing for a lot of people because, I would like to see
Yeah.
a non-monopoly of anime in the West, and if there's other competition
I don't like the
comes
fact
in,
that we have
I
all
think
these
that's just a
companies
good thing overall that's in that
monopolizing.
positive. But once again, what I just said here, that brief thing, the rumor, that's a rumor. There is no official source I can give on that or anything like that, but that's at least what I've heard. So just like I said, take it however you view it, but I'll leave it at that. Overall, Yeah, very crazy decision. How do you feel about this? Did you use this free version of Crunchyroll, this ad-supported Crunchyroll?
I didn't. I hate ads.
Do you think Crunchyroll is going to add a new tier that will have ads associated with it? Be honest in the comments below.
Yeah, they'll probably do the Hulu thing where you can get Hulu with ads, and I think Netflix is doing that too. I think that's going to be more of the model that we're going to start seeing more and more of, which is very disappointing. It is very disappointing that that's actually becoming more of a thing. Illegal. Yeah. I don't like the fact that all these companies are monopolizing the way they are. We had, Micron step out of the market, so now we've gone from a oligopoly to a duopoly in the DRAM chip manufacturer. And I have a feeling like it's going to get worse and worse and worse over time. But anyway, I have work tomorrow, so thank you all for hanging out with me. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me on all of my socials. The links are in bio for all of you. And of course, don't forget to join the Discord and the Matrix servers. And if you're on Twitch, stick around for the raid. I may, emphasis may, stream tomorrow, but our next, for sure, scheduled stream is Wednesday. I know we have a lot of content to get, caught up with vampires, so we'll try and do that. Sunday, I at least will try to be on a lot earlier, catch up on more of this content. This past Sunday I didn't because I've been cleaning and organizing, and as I said, I had to repair the washing machine and a few other things. So yeah, but thank you all for joining me. I love all of you. Stay safe and happy hacking. Stick around for the raid on Twitch, and otherwise, I'll see you on Discord and stuff. See y'all later.